on fraud and the arrests and charging of a lot of people. So we have a lot to discuss. So do me a favor, if you haven't yet, please consider hitting that like button. Help us out by sharing the show. That would be much obliged. There's so much more going on, but we'll get into that in just a little bit. Want to give a big shout out to Trump1. Thank you for the cookie. Thank you to Sean Joe for the cookie. And thank you to Moonbaby for the cookie. All over there at pilled.net on the foxhole. Moonbaby says, I made it on time. What up, Famalim? What up with you as well? Thanks for being here. All right, guys. Do me a favor. Sit back, relax, and grab your popcorn, because we're going to be right back in just a moment. So here is what your financial advisor is probably not going to tell you. By the time the news says to buy gold, it's already too late. You're waiting. I get it. Everybody's waiting to see if the ceasefire holds, waiting to see if the strait reopens, waiting to see just kind of what happens next. But the thing about it is, gold is not waiting for you, because gold moves on fear, on instability, on the unknown. And it moves a lot faster than you can react. So while you're waiting for certainty, the rest of the world is planning for what comes next. So you can wait or you can prepare, but you can't do both. And remember, the best time to put on a seatbelt is before the accident happens, not after. So if you're finally ready to act, then it's time to reach out to Noble Gold Investments. They help Americans just like you protect their savings with physical gold and silver. It can get shipped right to your door, or they can hold it in a tax-advantaged IRA. No taxes, no penalties, no rollover fees on 401ks or an existing IRA. So visit noblegoldinvestments.com/redpill78 and get your free investor kit today. 5 minutes today could protect decades of savings. Once again, noblegoldinvestments.com/redpill78. Don't be the one still waiting. And when you support my sponsors, you support this channel. All right. Good afternoon, everyone. Thank you very much for joining us. I appreciate you guys being here. I've got a little bit of a different setup going on in my studio. I've got a different camera right there with a different lens, and I'm loving it. I got to say, like, this feed is now 100% in 4K instead of being in 1080 as it is on my other camera. And the bokeh on the back, that the blurriness in the background, I really dig that. Anyways, thank you very much, everybody, for being here. Appreciate you guys hanging out with us today. And we have so much to discuss. And hold on just a second. Let me make sure that everything is okay. That is not correct. There we go. Okay, for whatever reason, the commercial kept popping back up. That was strange. All right. So, yes, it is cinematic. Thank you, Phil. Thank you very much for recognizing that. I appreciate it. All right. Now, let's, oh gosh, we've got so much good stuff to talk about. Hang on. Something just came across, and I want to make sure that I get a chance to insert it into the show at the appropriate moment. Now, choosing John Bolton as the headline for the show wasn't even necessarily the biggest newsworthy item today, but I'm very happy about it. I mean, I think a lot of people thought that John Bolton would probably get off and that he wasn't going to spend any time in prison. He wasn't going to have to do anything. They were probably going to put him in front of a Maryland or a D.C. jury and nothing would happen. And people would just be standing on that rug once again, watching as it got ripped out from underneath them, hitting their head on the floor on their way down. But it's not exactly happening like that. We actually do have some movement. And the closer we get to the later part of the year, of course, we have the midterms. The thing that most people are waiting for is the exposure of election fraud. I do believe we are getting that right now as well. Before we get into all of the news, though, I do want to let everybody know here, in case you weren't aware, that 22 years ago today, an American hero stood up for himself and stood up against the abusive behavior of a corrupt establishment who sought to destroy him and his business and steal his property from him. That man, as you may know, was a man by the name of Marvin Heemeyer. And Marvin Heemeyer built himself something called the Killdozer. And Marvin Heemeyer took that Killdozer into town and proceeded to destroy properties that were owned by the people who were working behind his back to destroy him and his business and essentially put him in the ground. And at the end of it, yes, in fact, Marvin did dispatch himself, and that was it. But he took out a lot of infrastructure in the meantime. So let's watch this quick, less than a minute clip of some of the highlights of that day, June 4th, 2004. Marvin Heemeyer and the Killdozer. Now, you might be asking yourself, or you might be asking, Zach, what the hell is a killdozer? It's exactly what it sounds like. Marvin Heemeyer, in his shop, essentially made an indestructible metal-encased bulldozer, basically a tank with a bulldozer on the front of it. And then he drove through town and he destroyed a bunch of property, destroyed a bunch of police cars, infrastructure in the town. Now, you might say, well, gosh, that's a little extreme. Well, you really need to know the story of what they did to Marvin Heemeyer and how far they pushed him. It's a lesson in humility, I think, for the people who thought that they could push Marvin around and then found out that actually you can only push a man so far before he starts pushing you back. Marvin Heemeyer is an American hero, and I saw somebody in the chat say he was the original Sky King. Absolutely. Yes, Marvin Heemeyer and the Sky King are two American heroes in my book. All right, so they for like the entire day, they were trying to get Marvin out of the killdozer. They couldn't. The only reason that it ended up stopping is because he got stuck on something, and he ended up dispatching himself, and eventually they got in, but they had to like cut their way into it. It was, maybe I'll do an entire show just talking about the killdozer. I think I might have actually done this on Baseless Conspiracies, or maybe it was me and Brad that did it in an altered state. Either way, Phil Scarborough shows a stolen election story. Hold on. I will save this, Phil, for our section on election security, which is coming up in just a moment. But thank you very much to Marvin Heemeyer. And let's go ahead and move on to the next story. Now, they told us that our future was in AI. They told us the future was in robotics, but they didn't tell us that the future was going to be in children getting their asses kicked by AI inside of a robot. And that's exactly what we just saw here in China. Take a look. This is kind of scary. And this poor kid, God, if I was his parents, I would have been pissed. That kid, he's like, ah! And who's the dickhead laughing? Come on, man. This kid's obviously hurt. That robot could have, like, ruptured his appendix or, like, maybe, like, punctured his spleen or something. Now, this particular robot, this is the, I mean, these are the ones that you see coming out of China where they're doing the synchronized dancing, or like they're like boxing or doing kung fu, or, you know, that kind of thing. So I don't know who was using, like, actually controlling this robot. It may have been autonomous and it just remembered some of its training or something like that, but I don't know, man. This is a pretty good example of why this stuff is not ready for prime time. And I see people buying these things out of China. Let me tell you, that's not what I think anybody should be doing. This is not what you want to do. You do not need to purchase an artificially intelligent robot coming from China that might have the ability to not only listen to you, but also kick your ass at the end of the day. Bad scene. So poor kid. The robot just backs up until it gets to a certain point, and then it stands there. I think that I'm actually kind of shocked that like more parents didn't get involved and intervene and be like, you know, what the hell are you doing? God dang. All right. Now, also right here, we need to take a look at California. This is a video from Bill Asaley, the U.S. Attorney for California. Very important because any investigations in Los Angeles are going to be run by Bill Asaley. Now, Bill Asaley used to be in the California State Assembly. And when Bill Asaley was in the Assembly, he was a champion for election integrity. He was a champion for election security. And they actually kicked Bill Asaley off of the Elections Committee because he was fighting to have voter ID be implemented in the state of California. Bill made a pretty amazing discovery when he was an elected official. And that discovery is that anybody, literally anybody, doesn't matter who you are, doesn't matter even if you're a resident of California, anybody can go to the state of California's website and anyone can receive a mail-in ballot. They don't have to have a driver's license. They don't have to have social security number. They don't have to have proof of identification. Because when you're going through the steps, you can tell the system that you simply don't have any of those things that a rational, reasonable person would assume would be necessary for you to get your mail-in ballot or even to register to vote. So take a listen to this. This is Bill Asaley in front of, I believe this is the California State Assembly building, discussing the fact that California elections are just totally insecure.
The Democrats in our legislature in Sacramento kicked me off my elections committee for fighting for you, the voters, and speaking up on voter ID.
I'm on the website for the state of California to register to vote. On the section where you put in your driver's license, your last four of your social, there's a box underneath each one that says, I don't have one. I don't have one. And then you're allowed to proceed to go to vote. What is the agenda here? Why do we let people register to vote and we don't verify their immigration status? We need to instill confidence in our elections. We need the public to know and trust that when we vote, it's secured and your vote counts equally. This idea that you're not allowed to register to vote unless you present some sort of identification is not accurate. It's not true. It's not being implemented in the state of California.
But guess what? We're going to go around them. That's why today we're announcing our voter ID ballot initiative. We're going to go around the legislature, get signatures directly from the voters, and we're going to put it on the ballot in 2026. California is going to have voter ID one way or another, with or without the Democrats here in Sacramento.
So that is actually on the ballot for this year, and that's because of Bill Asaley. Now, I think that this is largely the reason that Bill Asaley was chosen to be the U.S. Attorney for Los Angeles. Now, as soon as he announced this, he got kicked off the Elections Committee. When he was there on the website, he said, you know, I'm on the website for the state of California to register to vote for the section where you put your driver's license, your last four of your social. Underneath each of these things, there's a box, and it says, I don't have one. I don't have one. So then you're allowed to register even though you can't prove your identity, and then you go ahead and vote in the state of California. The only thing that makes sense is that they obviously want to make election fraud easier, and they also want to make sure that it continues. This is how the Democrats have rigged the elections in the state of California using mail-in ballots. I don't know exactly if this is the same methodology they're using in other states. I don't live in a state where you can simply go online and request a mail-in ballot without having any sort of identification. But they aggressively implemented mail-in ballots in 2016 to 2018. They passed laws like the Voters' Choice Act to expand vote-by-mail options. In 2020, that's when they made permanent use of universal mail-in ballots, which means if you're a registered voter in the state of California, you automatically get mailed a ballot. That's the same thing that they do in places like Oregon and Washington. And then, of course, they also legalized ballot harvesting. This is what we've seen illegally done in places like Minnesota within the Somali community. You've got third parties, people who will go around and they will deliver ballots to people and then come back around and pick them up and then take them to the ballot drop box locations. And then just in 2024, they passed SB 1174, which locked in the no ID standard across the state. And there were even local politicians who were brought up on charges for asking people to prove their identity when they went to vote. And right here, you have everything that you need to permanently rig an election in the state of California. And unless this is changed, then obviously we'll never be able to beat the system in California. Now, we're getting close. We're getting very close. I was just talking with Adel about this on Taking It Back. And as I said the other day, you know, the best thing that could happen would be for the federal government to be watching the state of California during this very very consequential midterm election and catch the state, catch bad actors in the process of cheating in the state of California, because obviously that gives President Trump the opportunity to draw attention to the fraud that was 2020. In that clip I played for you yesterday, he said, we know who cheated. We have all the evidence. They even cheated in 2024, but he didn't want to get into too much detail. I think the reason he didn't want to get into too much detail is because he knew that it's all about timing. President Trump knows when to bring these things forward. And the best time to expose mail-in fraud, mail-in ballot fraud, is when you've actually caught someone engaging in mail-in ballot fraud. Now, right now, they still don't have all the ballots in Los Angeles County. They still don't have all the ballots, vast majority of places in California. Overnight in LA County, there were helicopters that were bringing in bags and bags of ballots from all around the LA County area because LA County is huge. Well, President Trump started posting last night on Truth Social about the fact that right now they are cheating in the state of California. And he's announced that we are now investigating exactly what's taking place in California because election fraud is the #1 issue that most clued in people, whether you are conservative or not, if you care about the security of the state that you live in, if you care about the integrity of the United States of America, if you care about real representative republic, then the only way you can do that is to be assured that your ballot counts for you and that nobody else's ballot is going to cancel that out. And that includes people who are registered to vote to empty lots or who get mail-in ballots sent to UPS drop boxes or who have who get mail-in ballots sent to a porta potty on an empty lot. So Jordan Codranson has recently reported on the election that we have been covering there in Los Angeles. Spencer Pratt may even have beaten Karen Bass, but, you know, obviously we haven't had election fraud proven yet. However, now it's to the point where there will be a runoff. And President Trump believes that the fact that they can't count all the ballots in California on election night is the most likely indicator that fraud is taking place. I think I would hazard a guess and say that's probably what most of you believe as well. And the other thing is, whenever they have a situation like this, it always goes for the Democrats. It's quite clear who is cheating. So President Trump is directly alleging that big cheating by Democrats is taking place, and he's announced this investigation, and it's being run by Bill Asaley at the U.S. Attorney's Office in the District of Los Angeles. He said there's big cheating by the Democrats in California. Votes are all tied up, and they may not be in for weeks. Under investigation by the U.S. Attorney's Office in Los Angeles. Why the vote counting delay? Now, we have, of course, in the L.A. mayor's race, Karen Bass, Nithya Raman. Nithya Raman, as votes have started to come in, she's cutting into Spencer Pratt's lead, but Spencer Pratt is still #2. Some people are saying that Nithya Raman, because of all of these late arriving mail-in ballots, may end up beating Spencer Pratt, which would put her and Karen Bass in the runoff. And, of course, the same thing is happening at the state level with Steve Hilton. Steve Hilton is still the #1 vote getter in the state of California, but the vast majority of the ballots are not in yet. So it's a game that at any point could change. Now, President Trump just signed an executive order in the Oval Office, and we're going to be talking about that in a moment. But before we do that, I do want to talk about President Trump's commentary here as he answered a question about Bill Pulte. because that also has to do with election fraud. It also gives you a little bit more of an indication as to exactly why it is that both Democrats and Republicans in elected office might be so worried about Bill Pulte becoming the Director of National Intelligence. Let's take a listen.
Bill Pulte is the acting Director of National Intelligence. There's been a little bit of a pushback from some Senate Republicans. Why do you think, Mr. President, he's the best person for the job?
Well, he's very smart. He's a person who's got high integrity. He's done a phenomenal job at Fannie Mae, Freddie Mac. You probably have $1 trillion in value there. When he took over, it was much less. And I guess I'm responsible for that, too, because everybody wanted me to sell it in my first term for 10% of what it's worth right now. If I would have sold it, we would have lost $900 billion. We would have lost, think of it, it's probably worth $1 trillion. And I was offered, people want me to sell it at $100 billion, a very small percentage of what it's worth now. So, and he built it up a lot, did a great job. And it's an acting position, it's not a permanent. He's not going to be permanent because, I don't think he'd want to be permanent. But he's a very smart guy, and he may find out some things about the rigged elections, et cetera, et cetera. I think he'd like to do it. I think he wants to do it very much, got a lot of energy. But he'll be very good. Again, it's not a permanent position. Right. We're interviewing people right now, but it's somebody just to take it over for a little while.
Does he have the necessary, in your view, Mr. President, the necessary national security experience to take on that position?
Well, I do, and I think he does, actually, because he's smart. Because a lot of national security, I wasn't greatly experienced in national security, and I think I've done a really great job with it. A lot of people would say that I've ended 8 wars, and soon to be a 9th. I hope that works out too. Frankly,
All right, so what do we need in an acting DNI? We need somebody who's, number one, going to carry on the legacy of Tulsi Gabbard, who will finish the work that she started. One of those top issues that she was working on and still is apparently working on is the situation with election fraud. So Bill Pulte comes in, he finishes the job. He's somebody who is loyal to President Trump and to the America First agenda. He's not controlled by the intelligence community, so he has no loyalty outside of America and the president. And, of course, the fact that everybody is so worried about Bill Pulte gives me as much evidence as I need to know that this is actually the guy that we need to have in there. I think that President Trump has made a series of choices that people have questioned from the start. And in every single instance, these people have outperformed people's greatest expectations. And so I think Bill Pulte is going to do exactly what President Trump suggested right there. He will finish the job in terms of election fraud, along with the assistance of people like Bill Asalee in California, and, of course, building upon everything that Tulsi Gabbard is yet to be releasing before she leaves at the end of June. So Bill Pulte, as President Trump said, will only be the acting Director of National Intelligence. As the Scaramucci model has shown us, acting allows these people a sort of autonomy that they wouldn't have otherwise, because they don't have to be questioned, they don't have to be grilled, they don't have to be confirmed by the Senate, which is full of people who are, frankly, deep state swamp rats themselves. So I think Bill Pulte is going to come in, and in that short time, he's going to do some incredible work. Let's keep your eyes on him. Trisha Q. Patriot Texas says, I pray Marvin didn't have family that had to pay reparations. No, he did not. Trisha also says, Rumble chat disappeared. Oh, gosh, it did disappear. That's very strange. Let me fix that. Thank you. Okay. Yep, now it's working. Thank you, Trisha. Also, Bogey120. Bogey, thank you so much for that $20 rant. I'm actually awake early enough. Have a great evening, Zach. Thank you, Bogey. Appreciate you being here, homie. Also, Hogleg71, thank you for the can and the cookie. And thank you very, very much. All right, now, moving on from that right there, the reason President Trump came and brought all of these excited people to the Oval Office with him today is because he announced he was going to be invoking a Cold War Defense Production Act power so that he could directly funnel $700 million in federal support into America's coal industry and energy sector. He put $425 million into the plan to upgrade 13 existing coal-fired power plants across the United States, areas that were devastated by the step back from coal that the Obama administration made. West Virginia, Kentucky, North Carolina, Indiana, and others. And then another $185 million to match private funds for new facilities in Alaska and West Virginia, and then also to restart another coal-powered plant in Maryland, plus a $75 million grant for a major new coal export terminal in Oakland, California, which, of course, is going to piss off the California Democrats more than anything else. Here is President Trump signing that executive order, invoking the Defense Production Act, saving these 13 coal plants across 10 different states. These are plants that Obama had tried to shut down. Biden tried his damnedest to shut down. President Trump not only reopening them, but also helping to rebuild them. So here, let me go ahead and play the clip.
Today we're officially invoking the Defense Production Act to save 13 coal plants in West Virginia, Kentucky, North Carolina, Indiana, Tennessee, Arizona, Arkansas, Oklahoma, North Dakota, and Wisconsin. These were incredible plants, so productive, really producing a lot of the electricity, right? The electricity, it's really the best at that. You know, when they find something better, Chris, I think we'll be all set for it, right? But they're a long ways from finding something better.
Coal's critical.
And so when you look at that, those states, West Virginia, Kentucky, North Carolina, Indiana, Tennessee, Arizona, Arkansas, Oklahoma, North Dakota, Wisconsin, what do they all have in common? Trump won them.
Wisconsin.
Won every one of them by a lot, right?
Yeah.
I'm not even
Pennsylvania,
mentioning
too.
Pennsylvania, which we won also, right?
Yes.
But we won them all. We won, probably we won all 50. We had an honest count, if you want to know the truth. Our action will allow these facilities to invest in upgrades that will extend their operational lives for decades into the future, reinforce the reliability of our electric grid, which is really the biggest beneficiary, and most importantly, keep electricity prices very low for the American people.
All right. Now, obviously, this is not only going to reinvigorate this industry across these states, it will provide necessary energy for the people of these states and for the electrical grid. It will create additional jobs, and it is going to strengthen America's resilience and our capacity as we move into even bigger times. Let me say thank you to Bogey once again, who I agree with you here, my friend. I still think Devin Nunes is the ultimate pick for DNI. Devin Nunes is, in my opinion, the best possible candidate for DNI. And considering that he is now full-time on the intelligence board, he's got the necessary intelligence bona fides. He was on the Intel committee when he was in Congress. He's also extremely loyal to President Trump. He's been a part of exposing the grand conspiracy since the very beginning. Devin Nunes is 100% the man for the job. Now, I want to go back to the story from yesterday about the superseding indictments at the SPLC, because as we learned, the SPLC was funding extremist groups to an even greater degree than they had been accused of in the initial indictment, and up to and including admitting paying for the daily living expenses for these people, not just paying them to be part of the KKK or to buy wood for a cross burning and petrol for a cross burning, but actually, paying for these people's general living expenses. It's very similar to what we see going on at Delaney Hall right now with these groups of nonprofit organizations, these NGOs that are funding the paid protest movements all around the country. They are paying, coming and going. They're paying for the extremist groups, and then they're paying the protesters to get out there and rally against the extremist groups. And so what is very important about this new superseding indictment is that it doesn't just accuse the SPLC of funding these groups and lying about it. It actually is going for the forfeiture of the SPLC's funds that were secured through this scheme. This is why it was so important to show the dramatic increase in donations and the physical holdings that the SPLC had. The money that they had on hand increased by 3 to 4 to 5 times. The amount of real estate and physical property that they had also increased by virtually that same amount. And so what this means is that even though we don't have an individual who has been indicted through this fraud scheme, by accusing the SPLC of engaging in these particular behaviors, when they're found guilty, the U.S. government is looking to seize all of their funds and all of their property and make it the property of the U.S. government and the taxpayers of the United States. This is Tyler O'Neill, who had that thread that I was looking through yesterday. He appeared with Bannon early this morning. Let's take a listen.
The answer to your question about bankrupting them, about weakening their money, the gravy train for the SPLC, the answer actually there is in this superseding indictment, where they're going for forfeiture of funds that were secured through this scheme or artifice if the SPLC is convicted of this behavior. So a lot of people have been noting that there aren't specific names of specific individuals in the indictment, that nobody has been arrested as of yet. But I think what we're looking at here is an attempt to prevent the SPLC's propping up of hate, to stop this scheme and artifice, and then to say that if they are engaging in this scam to raise their money, then that money can be forfeited to the U.S. government. And that's what we're seeing in this superseding indictment. I think the SPLC is going to fight very hard against that. But when we're talking about a scheme to defraud donors and lie systematically in the way that they raise money, that's very powerful charges. And some of these charges, I think, are very clear in black and white, particularly the bank fraud charges, where we have clearly misstatement, false statements to a bank that say one thing and then statements that say the exact opposite a few years later. I mean, this is a very damning indictment for the SPLC, and I know our friends on the other side of the aisle want to continually make light of this shocking, damning scandal. But if you read this indictment, you can't come away with the idea that this is normal activity. I mean, it's astonishing.
So the language in the original indictment, a lot of people had suggested that perhaps it was weak, that it could have been stronger. And this is the beauty of superseding indictments. The DOJ always reserves the right to come back and hit you with additional charges. And it was quite a bit stronger through what I read through yesterday. Now, the other thing about it is, just because you don't have an individual at the SPLC who's being indicted yet, doesn't mean there won't be indictments of individuals coming up in the future. Because as you all know, I mean, corporations have personhood. Lisa? Okay. Corporations have personhood, but it's people who make up corporations, real people, living bodies, who actually make the decisions there. And so I think that there is a strong possibility that we're going to see that in the future. And I saw somebody ask if the SPLC executives had hit the exit button. No, that would have been Act Blue. Act Blue is where everybody left when the federal government started looking into them, including their legal team. The SPLC has hung on because their assertion is that they've done nothing wrong, even though all of their crimes are laid out in pretty clear black and white. Thank you to Sean Joe for the cookie. Thank you to Judy Little Ladybug for the cookie. And thank you to Sean Joe for one more cookie over on Pilled. I appreciate it. All right. Now, bad news for George Santos. Apparently, he's under DOJ investigation yet again. Like, my Lord. George Santos is barely out of prison, and it appears that he's already got himself on the radar of the DOJ yet again, this time under investigation for manipulation of prediction markets. And this is something I've seen the DOJ very recently begin to take pretty seriously. Prediction markets are a place where people can make a lot of money, but make no mistake, it's gambling, and manipulating gambling in this way is definitely something that the DOJ does not take kindly to. So, according to CNN, the Justice Department and the Commodity Futures Trading Commission are looking at George Santos and the site Kalshi, because if you'll remember last year for the state, or excuse me, this year for the State of the Union, the last State of the Union, George Santos went on X a day before, and he started saying that he was going to be attending the State of the Union. Now, at that exact same time, people started making millions of dollars in bets on whether or not certain people were going to be coming to the State of the Union. So because George Santos said he was going to be at the State of the Union, the likelihood of his attending soared through the roof, and a lot of people bet on that because, you know, he basically told them. So then once President Trump took the stage at the State of the Union, George Santos went on Twitter and said, yeah, I'm not going to be at the State of the Union. And he admitted that he wasn't actually going to be there. So at the same time that was happening, I guess George Santos went and put bets on Kalshi, betting on whether or not he was going to attend. Now, obviously, he knew he wasn't going to attend. This is all alleged and is being investigated. But because he had made that statement and then actually went and bet on Kalshi, that's why they're saying he might have done something illegal. So backing this up as something that may have likely happened, Kalshi actually froze George Santos' account, and then they're the ones who actually referred him to the Commodity Futures Trading Commission and to the Department of Justice, which are the two agencies that are actually investigating whether or not this took place. Now, NPR, I guess, reached out to George Santos and said, you know, are you aware that you're being investigated? And he said, well, that's news to me. And then they asked him whether or not he had a Kalshi account, and he said, I'm not saying yes, I'm not saying no. But he has previously spoken about the founder of Kalshi, a person by the name of Luana Lopez Lara, and he said, hey, this is a fellow Brazilian, this is someone that I know. And he was asked whether or not any investigation might be known, and this is after he was told about it, and he did not return any additional commentary on this, but he did post on X, I hate to disappoint you, but I don't engage with rag reporting anymore. Business as usual on my end, haters. Now, you know, if he did this, I don't know how much trouble he could get into, but it's definitely not a good look. I mean, you know, George Santos' whole thing is that he learned his lesson. He didn't really do that much to go to prison in the first place, and he was a victim of weaponization. But market manipulation is definitely the kind of thing that the DOJ and these financial regulators tend to look at and say, you know, we can obviously tell that this happened. And that would seem to indicate, if he did, that he didn't really learn his lesson, and he's trying to pull a fast one. So we would also like, actually, I meant to have this a little bit earlier during our conversation about election integrity, but California is not the only state where problems exist in the mail-in ballot system. In Utah, very similar to what we saw, I believe, in Maryland, where a whole bunch of incorrect mail-in ballots were sent out, about 9,000 voters just received the incorrect mail-in ballots, meaning that Republicans got Democrat versions of the mail-in ballot, Democrats got Republican versions of the mail-in ballot, and so now people in this area of Utah, Toole County, they're pretty upset, and a lot of people are calling attention to this and saying, well, how many more arguments do we need to get rid of mail-in balloting? Take a look.
Well, nearly 9,000 people received incorrect ballots in the mail for the Republican primary elections.
This is happening in Tooele County. That's where news specialist Erin Cox joins us live from now. And we'll go ahead and go to her story right now about this.
That's right. The county clerk says that they had the right envelopes and the right people, but it was the ballots that were printed wrong. Take a look.
The machines are registered and sealed here in Tooele County, ready to count the Republican primary votes.
I'm super excited. I'm always happy when ballots start hitting mailboxes.
In her
She's not excited now, though.
5 years as county clerk, Tracy Shaw says she's seen mistakes.
Printing errors happen, postal errors happen, but a solution can always be found in the end.
This year is no exception. Around noon on Tuesday, Tracy started getting calls about the almost 20,000 ballots that had been mailed out. Nearly 9,000 were incorrect.
There's been a ballot production error that resulted in, the wrong ballot being inserted into the wrong envelope.
After investigating with the state, they learned their data was correct. It was the printer, KP Corporation, that had misprinted the ballots.
They recognized the severity of this situation.
Tracy, with
So who's going to pay for that, right? I mean, if it's the county, you've just about doubled your costs right there because you've got to print all new ballots, all new envelopes, all new postage. Is the printer going to absorb that cost, or do they have something in their contract which allows them to be absolved of something like that? And then on top of that, you have all of those extra mail-in ballots that are just kind of out there in the ether.
the help of the lieutenant governor's office, has deactivated all the misprinted ballots. New ballots will be mailed out.
Monday is what their estimated date is.
Each ballot has a barcode on it, and this identifies the ballot for voting. Once it goes through this system, if it's the incorrect ballot, it'll go to this bin, and it won't be counted for votes.
Will it, though? I mean, how can we be guaranteed that that's something that will actually happen? I mean, it's just, hey, trust the black box. We promise you we're not going to screw you. And I just have zero faith in this.
The system knows which one is the live active ballot ID versus the ones that are old or have been deactivated.
Ready and waiting to count all of the votes correctly.
I don't feel like it's a cause for panic. I don't feel like it's a cause for accusations of widespread fraud. That's just not happening.
Now, I reached out to the KP Corporation and to the Lieutenant Governor's office and have not received a comment back. In the meantime, Tracy says if you have questions when you receive that new ballot, there are instructions inside, but she says you can also just call the county clerk's office. Live in Tooele.
All right. Yeah, trust us. We swear we're not going to screw you over. No thanks, Joe says, thanks as always, Lisa and Zach. You guys rock and I love your reporting. God bless. Please stay safe. Thank you, sir. Thank you very much. All right. Now, before we continue, I do have a brief message from our friends over here on Rumble. Let me say thank you very much. If you haven't yet, take a moment to hit that like button. If you're a parent, if you're a grandparent, this is an important message because obviously you want to bring up kids who care about this country. And this country is about to hit a major, major milestone. 250 years this experiment has been running. 250 years of grit, freedom, sacrifice, and yes, the greatest country the world has ever seen. This is that time that you want to take advantage of, teaching those kids exactly why America is so special. The things that make up this country at the heart of it, the ideas that started it all, why those ideas are important to continue to protect and defend today. And there is a free guide. It's called The Kid's Guide to America's 250th Birthday. It's a great way to introduce your kids to these ideas and how America began. It'll tell them who the founding fathers were, what it was they risked, and why the ideas they fought for still matter and are relevant. This guide is going to send them back to the very moment that those men put pen to paper and sign the Declaration of Independence. It's going to teach them in a way that will be easy to understand. It's not going to water it down or make it feel like schoolwork. So if you care about raising children who know where this country came from and more importantly, why it's worth preserving, this will be something you're going to want to grab. And the best part, it's completely free with the special offer. All you do is pay the $2 for shipping and handling. So to take advantage of it, head to freeusabirthday.com. That is freeusabirthday.com, and the Kids Guide to America's 250th birthday is there for them today. Because America's story matters, let's make sure the next generation knows it. Thank you very much to the good folks at Rumble. All right, and we're back. Let us continue. I have a couple of more wonderful clips from Secretary of the Treasury Scott Bessent. In this little interaction, a Democrat representative attempts to catch Scott Bessent up with a question about the elimination of the gas tax, and he apparently knows precious little to nothing at all. Take a listen.
Are you in favor of eliminating the gas tax?
We
have moved to...
Are you in favor of eliminating the gas tax?
We would like to work
Are you able to answer that, or is that not
Well, if I'm not interrupted, I can, Congressman.
Well, I'm waiting for your answer.
We have asked Congress to move to eliminate the gas tax. That is done through statute.
You have moved that. So you're in favor of eliminating the gas tax?
We have asked for that.
So we can join bipartisanly today because you're in favor to eliminate the gas tax?
Again, the White House has asked for it, sir.
They have? Why isn't it before the committee for a vote?
I don't run the agenda.
Well, it's good to hear that we're in favor of something that we can work on bipartisanly that will help relieve people who need it the most. Forgive me, but people in my district aren't doing cartwheels over this economy.
It's hilarious to me that these people are so clueless. Do you guys know why the gas tax exists? It was to fund the construction of the national highway and freeway system. And guess what? We've already got the highway and freeway system. When the system was built, the gas tax was supposed to be eliminated. So now we are paying taxes for something that we've already got. It's like we're paying to continue using something. And there's plenty of people out there who don't even take the highways, who are just going to drive around a local town. But yes, this information was already requested by Congress, and as Mr. Larson may not know, it's an act of Congress that has to repeal the gas tax. The president can't just say no more gas tax. Of course, he can do a holiday or something like that, but get it done. Go ahead and go for it. Make life easier for average Americans. Scott Bessent is incredible. I love this guy. All right, now, in this clip right here, he gives it back to Representative Sanchez when she tries to play catty bitch with him. And, of course, nobody's going to out catty bitch Scott Bessent. He is the #1 gay in the administration.
We follow the instructions of our lawyers, and we obey the law,
I
Representative.
hope that you're proud of your performance today, Mr. Secretary, because
I hope you get some social media
it's pretty
clips.
safe to say that this is probably the most corrupt Treasury Department in our nation's history. And while you dance around questions to protect Trump, Americans are suffering in Trump's spiraling economy. And inflation is now rising faster than average hourly wages. Gas prices are at an all-time high with the war in Iran. The cost of groceries has risen 3.2% over the past years, and prices on most goods have gone up because of Trump's tariffs. So I don't see how you could call that anything other than a failure of the most corrupt Treasury Department in history.
Your time has expired, Ms. Sanchez.
Thank you. My time has expired.
Secretary, I would love for you to respond to the accusations at your department, because I think you are due the opportunity for that.
The Congresswoman is slanderous. She has nothing but the unsubstantiated opinions, and I will not stand for that. There is nothing corrupt. We move at the highest levels, and just because she cannot get the answer she wants, if she would like to give me facts, she seems long on facts, short on facts, long on hot air, and I will not stand for that.
Oh, man, he just, it's no wonder that he told Bill Pulte he was going to kick his ass when they were having a heated moment. Nobody is going to step on Scott Bessent. I absolutely love it. All right, now, recently there have been a series of behind closed door depositions that have been undertaken by the Oversight Committee by former associates of Jeffrey Epstein. And now we have some new information that we've been able to glean from that. So Sarah Kellen, Jeffrey Epstein's former assistant, when she came in and testified, she gave a couple of names that people on the committee had never heard before, that hadn't yet come up in the course of the emails and the files that had been handed over by the FBI and the Department of Justice. So House Oversight Chair James Comer and the other Republican lawmakers are now calling on the Justice Department to investigate these allegations involving two men who were accused of sexually abusing Jeffrey Epstein's longtime assistant, which would be Sarah Kellen. Now, let me do a real quick refresh over here on the Rumble chat. So this pressure that they're getting from the Republican lawmakers is coming from Kellen's testimony, which was delivered last month. In her closed-door review, Kellen said a man by the name of Frederic Pkwy, he's a French celebrity hairstylist, and Philip Levine, the former mayor of Miami Beach, both sexually assaulted her on two separate occasions. She said that a third individual, Patrick Demarchelier, I don't know, it's French, so I don't speak French, but Demarchelier, a French fashion photographer, exposed himself to her, according to this newly released transcript, which we're now getting our hands on. So the letter that James Comer sent to Acting Attorney General Todd Blanche is asking the Justice Department to investigate these specific allegations and any other criminal conduct that may have been committed by Pkwy and Levine in particular, and noted that Levine appears in the so-called Epstein files some 600 times, and that Pkwy was known as a close friend of Jeffrey Epstein's. From the letter, Comer stated, Ms. Kellen provided new information crucial to our investigation that is helping to bring transparency for the American people and accountability for survivors. During her transcribed interview, the Oversight Committee received serious allegations of sexual criminal misconduct involving two individuals. The Oversight Committee is not a law enforcement entity, and our role is not to determine guilt or innocence. We are referring these allegations to the DOJ, which has the tools to investigate criminal misconduct. Now, Comer's office provided this letter along with the transcript of Kellen's interview, which offers all of these new details and her allegations against these three men she has accused of sexual misconduct, as well as describing her interactions with both Epstein and Ghislaine Maxwell. At this point, none of the men that have been named have been charged with a crime in connection with Jeffrey Epstein. Comer has said the committee did not previously know of any allegations of sexual abuse that they had committed. However, now that we've got credible allegations of sexual abuse, I see no reason not to investigate them. Now, Pkwy has put through a comment by his media representative. He said that he never took advantage of Sarah Kellen and he did not introduce her to Jeffrey Epstein. That same representative already previously disputed any assertion that Pkwy had done anything wrong, and he specified Mr. Pkwy had never assaulted anyone. Mr. Pkwy was astonished to read of Miss Kellen's story. Mr. Pkwy never abused anyone. He never participated in any illegal behavior. He never knew anything about Jeffrey Epstein's repugnant depravity or trafficking. He did nothing wrong. A spokesperson for Mr. Levine said, nearly a quarter century ago, our client had a brief, intimate encounter with another consenting adult. So it sounds like he's admitting he actually did dip his wick in Sarah Kellen. Any allegation suggesting otherwise is not true. Earlier this year, Levine told WLRN in another statement that he had only met Epstein a few times and he regretted it. As I have stated previously, my only connection to Jeffrey Epstein arose solely from my former friendship with Ghislaine Maxwell. I met Epstein only a few times. I never conducted business with him. I never visited his island, and I never flew on his aircraft. I regret ever meeting him. So if he was barely around Jeffrey Epstein, then when did he find the time to have sex, consensual or otherwise, with his personal assistant, who one would imagine was essentially inseparable from Jeffrey Epstein during the time that she was employed there? Now, according to the transcript, Kellen said she initially met Pkwy in 2000 or 2001 in Honolulu, not the last time we're going to talk about Hawaii today, while he was promoting his hair care line. Pkwy, she said, introduced her to Epstein as a Victoria's Secret model scout. She recalled knowing who Pkwy was, given that she was obsessed with fashion at the time, and later came to realize his description of Epstein as a model scout was perhaps misleading. Clearly, he was not a Victoria's Secret scout, and that's what they were posturing him to be. Kellen testified that Pkwy asked her to be in a hair show that didn't exist, and that she ended up staying in his hotel room because she didn't have any money to buy a separate room. He took advantage of me that night, she said. Kellen also told lawmakers that Levine abused her in 2002 or 2003 in Saint-Tropez, where she was with Epstein and Maxwell, who were vacationing. She described Levine as one of Maxwell's really good friends and alleged that Levine assaulted her after Epstein and Maxwell went to bed. He brought me into his bedroom and said, "You know, you must be so lonely, always with them and never not having your own life and kind of not being able to be with anyone. Kind of, and was basically forcing himself on me." Kellen also alleged that Levine had assaulted her on the beach. We were kind of all walking, and I think it was Jeffrey and Ghislaine that were kind of ahead of us, and there was me and Philip, and then there was like a wooden kind of shack on the beach, and he just like grabbed my hand and pulled me into the shack. She said she never considered pursuing sexual assault charges. She also described an instance where she said that occurred around 2002, where the French fashion photographer Patrick Demaralchier exposed himself to her in his studio and then took photos of her. He walked over to me with his pants down, and I refused. She did not provide any further details, and Demaralchier had died back in 2022, so he can't talk about it. Of course, Kellen, if you know anything about the Epstein situation, is kind of polarizing because she did work with Jeffrey Epstein for quite some time, and she was deeply involved in the circumstances of Jeffrey Epstein's business. In 2007, she was actually identified by law enforcement as one of the potential co-conspirators that Jeffrey Epstein was using to bring girls into his sex trafficking empire, and a lot of people believe that she was a recruiter. I think that what is very unfortunate is that, like so many other women and girls who came into Jeffrey Epstein's orbit, they begin as victims and then they are transitioned into co-conspirators at some point because, you know, at that point, you know, who are they going to tell? They're going to say, well, I used to get raped by Jeffrey Epstein, but then he started paying me to bring other girls in to be raped by him. So I guess, you know, maybe I don't want to talk to the police. And that's basically what happened. But she did describe herself as a victim, and she testified that she was never interviewed by law enforcement about her time working with Jeffrey Epstein until 2019, which was under President Trump's first administration. She also offered more details about the abuse she suffered at the hands of Epstein and Maxwell. Ghislaine Maxwell, as we've come to learn, was perhaps even more sadistic than Jeffrey Epstein. And she said that sometimes she would be abused on a weekly basis, that Jeffrey Epstein controlled her life. He dictated what she would wear, how her hair was cut, and where she lived. She said he was terrifying. He was completely dominating of everything in my life. He just decimated any source of autonomy that I had. She also described how it was difficult to leave Jeffrey Epstein's orbit once she got sucked in because, of course, he was offering her financial assistance to make her dreams come true. And unfortunately, it seems like there's a lot of women out there who are willing to debase themselves when money comes into the equation. Not you in the audience, but of course, there are many women out there who find themselves in a position like this. He was very good at targeting vulnerable people. He would get to know you and your situation, and then he would offer help. Kellen recalled one instance where Maxwell abused her on Epstein's Little St. James Island, and she said she was not aware Maxwell was involved in abusing minors, but she was not surprised. I remember Ghislaine was just on the bed naked. I was not expecting her to be there. I was very surprised and extremely uncomfortable, and I just remember her kind of like touching me and showing how to touch Jeffrey and what he liked. Kellen accused Maxwell of turning Jeffrey into the monster that he became, describing her as the most selfish person I had ever encountered. She was mean and belittling. She would literally call me her slave, her minion, piglet, polyp on a donkey's ass. That's very creative. And she would belittle you as much as she could to make herself appear more superior. Throughout the years she worked for Epstein, Kellen said she only met Donald Trump for maybe 5 minutes at Mar-a-Lago in 2002 or 2003 when she accompanied Epstein to use the gym at the club. She also said she knew Trump and Epstein were friendly because Epstein had photos of him in his homes. She recalled Trump banned Epstein from returning to his club after he hit on a member's daughter, and that the falling out between the two men occurred after they were bidding on the same property in Palm Beach. Eat it, bitches. Anybody out there still trying to carry on the narrative that Jeffrey Epstein and Donald Trump were still close friends even after he was exposed as a pedophile? Here we go. One of Jeffrey Epstein's closest confidants, his personal assistants, once again confirming exactly what we have said over and over and over again. She also said she was on Epstein's private plane with former President Bill Clinton for all of his trips with Epstein to Asia and Africa. She saw Bill Gates, Prince Andrew, Ehud Barak, Leon Black, among many others, interacting with Jeffrey Epstein. She did not allege any wrongdoing of those men, but she did describe her own abuses and experience, and her attorney made clear in the interview that she would not talk about other persons' victimizations. The reason for this is to include her own mental trauma, her ability to withstand and sustain questions on these points, legislative purpose and pertinency, concerns about the private rights of individuals, including my client, and the protection of her constitutional rights, her lawyer told the committee. Kellen said she would be willing to answer more questions about other victims if she was given immunity by the Department of Justice or the Oversight Committee. So, yes, Sarah Kellen may have been a victim, but she definitely was a co-conspirator. Thank you so much to Jim Kyle, who says, that's the thing. They all got paid one way or the other. If he didn't fill their dreams, he promised, they got mad. Yes, that is true. Lee Walden says, Zach, your appearance on Daily Question with CanCon regarding facts on the ground about all things American and the Boss was the best analysis, and it was not only heartwarming, but very prescient yet. Best yet. Thank you so much. I appreciate that. I wanted to clip that, but I haven't had a chance to do it. Trisha also says, Highway 45 from Galveston to Houston and beyond has been under construction since the 50s. All my life. No one gets it. It's a failure for the people. Take away their tax money, so all of this will stop. I've never been there, but I would be happy to end taxes for people everywhere. All right, for my friends, this is it. This is the moment. Filter Dog 1 says, where does the gas tax money go? Well, it goes into some general fund that probably the Department of Transportation is controlling. I can't tell you specifically, but that's what I would assume is happening. All right. John Bolton has agreed to plead guilty over his mishandling of classified documents. Now, I do really want to play for you John Bolton talking about Donald Trump mishandling classified documents. I've played this before, but it's good to hear. Let me see if I can find it easily. Yes, here it is. This is just one such instance, but John Bolton had a habit of going out and saying that President Trump needed to be jailed.
Republicans used to believe that not prosecuting criminals led to more crime. The answer here is take the politics out of the decision, and in this case, proceed with the prosecution and do the same for anybody else who does anything even remotely like it. Just read the indictment and ask yourself, if the government can prove what they allege here, shouldn't this man go to jail? The simple fact he had the documents for any reason or no reason should subject him to prosecution. You know, Republicans used...
That's right. Should subject him to prosecution. Speaking about himself. All right. So John Bolton is going to be looking at 60 days in jail. This is a pretty good deal for him. However, he does have to forfeit $2.25 million. We don't know what John Bolton's net worth is, but I would hazard a guess and say that the deal he's making could also include some other pieces. Now, we haven't actually had a chance to read the actual documents yet because I don't believe that they have actually been signed. This is just John Bolton's lawyers telling the Department of Justice, we will do this. We also don't know if the DOJ has actually accepted this deal. This appears to be what John Bolton is willing to do. He'll go to jail for 2 months. He'll give up $2.25 million. Maybe he's also going to be giving up some other information. I don't know if the Department of Justice threatened to charge his wife and his daughter. By all rights, they could have. I think perhaps they should have, because John Bolton might have been willing to spend more time in jail. But I will tell you this, John Bolton will forever now be labeled a felon. John Bolton also loses his security clearance, and John Bolton's utility within the deep state is no longer applicable. So John Bolton, who was, of course, President Trump's former national security advisor until he was fired, and then he became a outspoken critic of the president, is expected to plead guilty over these mishandling of classified documents. Now, this is only according to sources who are familiar with the matter. So this deal that we're talking about could also be an attempt by Bolton's legal team to secure it before it actually is agreed to by the Department of Justice. But he supposedly intends to plead guilty to one count of illegal retention of sensitive national security documents, and he's also agreed to repay more than $2 million. This conviction of the one count of the illegal retention comes with a sentence between 0 and 60 months in prison, depending on who the judge is overseeing this case. He may plead to receive 2 months in prison, but the judge could say, you know what, I think that your crime deserves a lot more than 2 months. And so since you've taken the plea deal and you've admitted that you're guilty, I'm actually going to give you 12 months in prison or something like that. So we all know that the FBI raided John Bolton's house. They knew that he had these highly sensitive classified documents that he had provided to his family. I think it's also said that perhaps he was selling information to other countries. I don't know if that was 100% accurate or not. But if John Bolton was selling secrets, or if John Bolton put the lives of Americans at risk, I would really like to see him serving more than 2 months in prison. Now, keep in mind, this was also a probe that was opened under the opened under the original Trump administration, that was closed, rather, under the Biden administration. So it was sitting there for a while, and John Bolton had some time to go in and commit some more crimes in the off years when President Trump was no longer the president. So these documents were about weapons of mass destruction and the United Nations, categories of potentially classified records that the FBI reported finding at Biden's office included travel memo documents with the secret label, confidential documents from the U.S. mission to the UN, confidential documents related to strategic communications, classified documents related to weapons of mass destruction. Now, until we actually hear word from the Department of Justice, all of this is preliminary. But the fact that it's being leaked, I tend to believe, is from John Bolton's own legal team, and he's just trying to control as much of the narrative as he possibly can. Artsy Joan, thank you so much. I found out toll roads are leased by foreign countries, so the tolls we pay do not go to the states. They invest to build the toll booths and roads, then take the money. Off topic, but is it true? I think every single toll road is going to be an individual circumstance. The toll roads we have in Florida are owned by the state of Florida. There could be a toll road that is built by a private corporation, but you don't have to use that toll road. You can use the regular road. It's like a private bridge that's built between the United States and Canada or something like that. So yeah, every single road is going to be on a case-by-case basis. So I don't think it's safe to say that all toll roads are owned by foreign companies or foreign corporations. All right, now, President Trump has also announced that he will be nominating acting Attorney General Todd Blanche to become the Attorney General of the United States. I think that Todd Blanche is a great choice. I would love to see Todd Blanche continue in this role. Yesterday in the Rose Garden, Todd Blanche was head-tipped by the president, and he said he's acting attorney general, but tomorrow I'm instructing Dan and everybody else that's involved in the very complicated process that we are going to make him the permanent attorney general. And I believe we have a clip of President Trump saying that. Let me just get past this
For anyone
commercial.
struggling with deteriorating vision, do not have another Greek yogurt before you see this.
He's acting attorney. He's acting attorney general. Tomorrow I'm instructing Dan and everybody else that's involved in that very complicated process, which is going to go, I think, very quickly, that we are going to make him permanent attorney general.
All right. And, of course, Tom Tillis is already saying that he will not support Todd Blanche. He's the same guy who derailed Ed Martin from becoming the D.C. U.S. attorney. Tom Tillis is not going to do anything that the president wants him to do or that is good for the United States of America. until he finally retires. Once he's out of office, that will be the last official act of doing anything that's good for the country. But Tillis had said Todd was instrumental in kind of de-escalating the whole Powell matter. So I don't know, maybe he's going to change his mind. But he did not like the January 6th aspect of Todd's experience. He said, outside of that, I mean, he's got good credentials. People are going to hammer him because he was the president's personal attorney, but I'm just more about getting through the January 6th stuff. It's not a gray area for me. Either he equivocated and said harming these Capitol Police officers was an okay thing, or he didn't, and we'll find that out in due diligence. Tillis told me he's lost a lot of respect for Blanche and credits him. He has a lot of respect for Blanche. Yeah, I don't know what it is about Jerome Powell that Tom Tillis has such a hard-on for him, but for some reason, he does not want Jerome Powell to be investigated for anything. All right, now, here we have a clip from Judge Janine Pirro talking about a brand new indictment we've secured against the former D.C. Housing Authority employee, a man by the name of Richard Cunningham. Richard Cunningham was a real estate developer in the District of Columbia, and he's just pled guilty in a $15 million fraud scheme. Let's take a listen.
You know, there's nothing like a creative criminal. And one of those individuals is a guy by the name of Richard Cunningham. He's 55 years of age. He pled guilty today to a $15 million mortgage fraud scheme. Here's how he did it. He had several properties in the district, and he applied to get loans on those properties. And in order to get those loans, he had to show that he had sufficient equity as collateral to get the loans on the properties. He, of course, didn't have sufficient equity because, although it appeared he did, he had forged the documents to make it look like the balances were, in fact, less than they were. But the really creative part is when he then applies to another mortgage lender to get renovation loans for properties that he say are already leased by veterans. And this renovation financing is for a lease document that was run out of HUD. He then seeks renovation financing from a secondary lender and says, look, I've got all these veterans and I want to renovate the properties. They're already leasing these properties. There were no veterans living in the properties, and he had forged all these documents to make it look like there was a veterans assistance program and he was doing the right thing. Well, he wasn't. So we caught him, and now he is facing sentencing where he will face approximately 30 years in prison and a significant fine. So stop trying to defraud the government and never, ever use the sacrificed as veterans as the basis upon which to defraud the government.
Got him. Also, looks like the Senate just attempted to pass a measure that would have blocked President Trump from being able to appoint Bill Pulte as the acting director of national intelligence. It actually almost was deadlocked, 49-49, and it looks like it couldn't pass. It was deadlocked at 49-49. There were a couple of Republicans that voted with the Democrats, Murkowski, Cassidy, Young, and Collins. President Trump, of course, wins this battle, and Bill Pulte will become the acting director of national intelligence. So I continue to wonder why it is that they're so concerned about him. Can't wait to hear it. All right, so earlier today, Attorney General Blanche, FBI Director Kash Patel, the entire team behind the fraud task force, and Dr. Oz from CMS had a press conference in Ohio announcing indictments against 14 new defendants, all of them engaging in Medicaid fraud schemes. Now, this is a result of the investigative reports we've been going over for the last couple of weeks by Luke Rosiak. Luke Rosiak, who had gone in and identified all of these different fraudulent schemes in Ohio. I don't see anybody of Somali origin on here, and I don't know why that is, but a good portion of Luke Rosiak's investigation focused on the Somali Medicaid fraud ring that exists in Columbus, Ohio, that is itself alone responsible for billions of taxpayer dollars being siphoned out of that region, out of the entire country. If we look, just a quick rundown of some of the stuff that Luke found. Yeah, the politician who founded an $11 million home health care company that he was running part-time, didn't even mention it in his political biography. He also funded his campaign with donations from other owners of home health care companies. You had a woman who reinvented her janitorial LLC as a healthcare provider and then billed Medicaid nearly $100,000 in the first month. You had a landlord who bought airplanes after renting space to hundreds of home healthcare companies that billed Medicaid $250 million. You also had the $1 million Medicaid business that was owned by a couple who had repeated convictions for fraud, violence, and theft. You also had a man who went to prison for Medicaid fraud, but he told the government he was too broke to pay restitution, but his neighbors and associates are currently presiding over this poverty program empire. And then an accountant who lost his license for stealing public funds and then opened a $7 million home health care company using the address of another convicted money launderer's teenage son. So Attorney General Todd Blanche announced earlier today that these 14 defendants have been charged over the past week for their involvement in these fraud schemes targeting over $50 million there in Ohio. That includes a 32-count indictment against 2 state employees and 2 other co-conspirators for $30 million in fraudulent therapeutic behavioral services. So let's go ahead and take a listen to Todd Blanche announcing this endeavor.
Today, the Department of Justice is announcing significant fraud enforcement in the state of Ohio, as well as a historic fraud-fighting partnership with state of Ohio officials, which is exactly how it should be in every state. One that can serve as a template partnership for other states in this country. We welcome everyone, everywhere, to team up with our fraud division and our federal partners and our U.S. attorney's offices to bring fraudsters to justice. I want to talk about a few cases that we're announcing today, and I think you'll agree with me that some criminals have gotten so bold, so audacious as to defraud the government of tens of millions of dollars. I'm just going to give a few examples right now. It should shock your conscience. Today, we unsealed a 32-count indictment against 2 state employees and 2 other co-conspirators for allegedly billing $30 million to the government for therapeutic behavioral services that were never provided. We've also unsealed an indictment charging 4 defendants in a scheme to defraud a COVID program. Again, these programs, as we all know, were meant to benefit small businesses and individuals struggling because of the pandemic. In total, between our state and federal partners, today we're announcing.
All right. Now, this 32-count indictment was also gone into in a little bit more detail by Dr. Oz, and we also have the Attorney General of Ohio, Dave Yost, who himself has been investigating Medicaid fraud for many years, almost 16 years, he said. But this is the first time he's ever had any support from the federal government and the first time that anybody's ever really paid attention. So Dave Yost is obviously, you know, the chief law investigative officer in the state of Ohio. And what they're doing by going to Ohio is creating the template for each and every state to be working with the Fraud Enforcement Division to make sure that we catch as many of these people as possible, receive as much money back as we possibly can. And then they're also going to be punishing the states that are choosing not to work with them. Ohio is, of course, a test case and a success case because there is a lot of fraud there. Let's take a listen.
I've been engaged in this fight since I was the elected auditor of state back in 2011. Through my 8 years as auditor of state and almost 8 years now as attorney general, I have been doing Medicaid investigations, prosecutions. I have never had the level of interest and support from the federal government under any administration that you're witnessing here today. It's been a sometimes lonely fight against fraud, but it's no longer a lonely fight. And what's the difference? President Trump Vice President Vance, and this team that you see arrayed here today, these senior federal officials who could be anywhere else, who have serious duties, are saying, this is the most important thing. I'm going to be here. We're putting everything on the field. I'm grateful for your commitment, and I look forward to the continued partnership as we work together for the people of this state.
Because undoubtedly the work is not yet done. There are still many, many fraudsters that they need to catch. Now, here is FBI Director Kash Patel also commenting on the investigation and, of course, the fraudsters themselves.
To just highlight some of the work that we are doing. Operation Playground Therapy is what the FBI is here to talk about today. As the Attorney General highlighted, literally tens of millions of dollars that was supposed to go to kids was stolen, allegedly, by individuals who worked in government and the private sector and thought they could fleece Americans and our treasure, our children, of the hard-earned dollars, the taxpayer dollars that we provide to support them in their time of need. Well, they got caught. And not only did they get caught, so many others got caught. Just take a look at some of the vehicles that are here as part of their ill-gotten gains and proceeds. They didn't just take the money, they paraded it around the country. And thanks to this team here, you are seeing what hard work, dedication to the rule of law, and true unified effort across all fronts when no one wants the credit and everyone wants to just do the work. These are the results that we're here to talk about today. Importantly for the FBI, and thanks to Vice President J.D. Vance's vision, he had an idea. He said, hey, you guys have a top 10 most wanted list for all gangbangers, terrorists, narco-traffickers, murderers, and rapists around the world. How about we have a top 10 list for most wanted fraudsters? So, Mr. Vice President, thanks to your vision, we're here to deliver, and you see it here today. It is live officially on the FBI website. I want all Americans to take a look at these most wanted individuals and look at the amounts, the tens of millions and billions of dollars in fraud that they have decimated our societies from.
So let's take a look at those most wanted fraudsters. Right here, today we're announcing unprecedented federal and state cooperation in Ohio for the fight against fraud, which includes partnerships and a data sharing agreement to enhance the detection and prosecution of fraud, federal and state charges against 9 defendants for their alleged participation in $42 million and more in fraud, orders of detention this week for 3 defendants, with 2 additional defendants pending extradition in connection with an additional $15 million in fraud, and the creation of the FBI's most wanted fraudsters list. By holding these fraudsters accountable, Acting Attorney General Todd Blanche said, and partnering with the FBI on a robust most wanted fraudster list, we are pursuing fraud more aggressively than ever. No fraud scheme is beyond our reach. Take a look at this. $470,000 in cash and 14 luxury cars were seized this week. You can see here you've got Hummers, Bentleys, Corvettes, Mercedes, BMW, and a Jaguar. Looks like there's a Jaguar there before Jaguars got gay. And then right here, you have the 10 most wanted fraudsters list. It looks like these are fraudsters that they're still attempting to catch. Looks like one of them is a Somali. You can see that goofy little bugger right down here. But you've got Rodney Dean Allen. He's wanted for wire fraud. $7.3 million he was able to siphon out between 2016 and 2018. Christopher Burns, a right giga Chad, he's wanted for mail fraud, total losses of $10 million from 2020. John Michael Demetrion, failure to appear and mortgage fraud, $1.3 million, 2005 to 2007. Julian Baldueza Demetrion, looks like maybe his sister or his wife, again, failure to appear and mortgage fraud. Saeed Abdullahi Arig, money laundering and wire fraud, $4.2 million. Elaine Angine Esco, wire fraud and money laundering, $32 million. Herbert Kimball, failure to appear, healthcare fraud, $1.2 billion. Holy jeez. And then Michael Lizazo Marasigian, violation of pretrial release conditions, conspiracy to operate an illegal gambling business with total losses of $34 million. I want you to just look at this this guy right here, Herbert Kimball, $1.2 billion. Oh my God, that is a lot of money. That is a lot of money. Holy jeez. Now, I don't know if any of these people are illegal aliens or if any of them are naturalized, but right now they are just wanted by the FBI. And then right here, Abu Trika, I don't know who this guy is, but he's got a G-Wagon. That's a sign of wealth right there. When you have a modern-day G-Wagon, I would just settle for a 1992 G-Wagon. That would be great. Something I could wrench on and go off-roading. And, of course, you know, just drive around in it because I love G-Wagons. All right. Now, moving on from that, we've got a couple of clips from Dr. Oz talking about some of the actions they took today. In addition to the charges, of course, they need to shut down these businesses. They also, of course, are taking efforts to make sure nobody else is going to be able to do this again in the future.
So today we have three major announcements from the healthcare part of this fraud endeavor. The first is that the state of Ohio, and I want to applaud the Medicaid office here, they will be announcing at 1 o'clock, and please pay attention to that important announcement, that they are suspending 49 home healthcare providers who have been identified as high risk to the Medicaid program. These people have billed millions of dollars to take advantage of our most vulnerable, and if you're willing to steal from folks who are down and having a difficult time, you'll not just steal their money, you'll steal their health, you'll steal their lives. And we're seeing that. No more champagne on private jets for these people, no more new cars, no more luxury endeavors and vacations. It's done.
Now, just so you know, Dr. Oz right now is talking about the Bhutanese and the Nepalese fraudsters that we were talking about yesterday.
We're coming after you wherever you are. And as Attorney General Blanche highlighted, we are earnest and serious in this endeavor. We will not be daunted. Ohio Governor DeWine also sought a 6-month moratorium for all new home health care and hospice in the state of Ohio. We granted that within a day, and we hope that will help at least slow the bleeding, using a surgical metaphor, so we can get a bandage on the wound, maybe put a couple stitches in, and take out some of the folks who have been stabbing the patient of Medicaid. Second big announcement, in order to solidify collaboration, CMS, Medicare, Medicaid, and Ohio are going to launch a state-specific Medicaid fraud room. It's going to copy the Medicaid fraud room created at the federal level by the task force. The findings surfaced through this state partnership, we believe, will free us to be able to directly collaborate at a national level, getting all states to understand what the problems are within their areas and accelerating our ability to take out high-risk providers. We'll identify them and we'll enforce actions around them. The applied behavioral analysis process, it's called ABA therapy for autism, has been scandalously abused. This is, again, taking advantage of children with autism, or getting their parents to lie about whether the child has autism, or weakening the system so the kids who actually need the services can't get them anymore. There are 9 providers that were paid more than $1 million to do this last year, these ABA services. We're going to go after them. We're going to deny some of the issues. In fact, 2 of these people were denied access to Medicare already. They should never have been in the Medicaid program. The top provider earned over $3 million. That's twice the closest competitor. And remember, the average provider of autism services gets paid around $200,000. So to have someone pay over $3 million is shocking. And the war room that's created with Ohio will be opening investigations on 2 home health care providers. And this war room is going to yield huge benefits. And finally, we want to speak a little bit about the fact that we have the need to audit states all over the country to help states understand where they are in comparison to all the other states. We don't have a national effort that allows states to at least get a best practices idea from surrounding areas. So we have now, and I can announce today, asked the state of Indiana to work with Oracle Health to provide that exact set of information. So all the states now will be armed with information, for example, on high-risk providers. And the ABA therapy autism, as I mentioned before, we've asked all 50 states to revalidate these providers and other high-risk categories. Every single state has agreed. By this Friday, they're obliged to provide us with a specific plan. But if you're involved in some high-risk endeavor, these are endeavors that are unlicensed individuals, often in unsupervised settings, we want the states to go back and check who you are. We're not paying fraudsters for dishonest endeavors that hurt the American people.
All right. So obviously getting these people shut down, putting that 6-month moratorium on any new businesses in this sector, and then also revalidating the owners of each and every one of these businesses. You're going to have a lot of them choosing to shut down, and I bet you're probably going to have many of these people just leaving the country because they know that it's only a matter of time until they get caught up 6 in the morning and the DOJ comes knocking on your door. That's not a very nice alarm clock. Now, right here, Dr. Oz specifically comments on the fraud that we've spoken about that's taking place in the Columbus area. This is where I think we're probably going to see the next set of indictments coming from.
Last week with members of the CMS team, and we came because we're investigating home health care fraud, autism fraud, and a series of different ways that the federal government is being pierced with different arrows from criminal elements that desire to suck taxpayer dollars out of the federal government and out of state government coffers as well. I was visiting a facility called La Belle Home Health. It's run by woman Najumi Tatsing. You may not see her here today because she's in jail. And she went to jail because she was accused and convicted of taking billing practices to a level we had not seen before. She was billing for people who are deceased. Billing for dead people is a bad look in court. And it showed at her conviction when she was accused and appropriately taken out for doing things that we find reprehensible. Now, if she was the only one, we wouldn't be here in force. Unfortunately, this area around Columbus is responsible in Franklin County for 1/3 of all of the $1.5 billion spent on home health care in Ohio. Think about that. 1/3 of all of the money spent on home health care in the entire great state of Ohio is generated here. That's 3 times what you would expect. There's a road very close to where we are, 288 home health care facilities in that several block area on that one road. Again, it defies belief. Some of these buildings were vacant. You wouldn't put anybody up in those buildings, not certainly the place that would house home health care. Now, this is a mecca for Somalian populations.
Mecca.
It's a hub for Nepalese and Bhutanese populations. These are insular groups, but we are naive to think that practices that were felt to be commonplace in other parts of the world wouldn't come to this great country if we didn't pay attention to some of the program integrity issues which were ignored en masse with the prior administration.
Yeah, of course, if people are scammers back in their home country, they're going to come to the United States and they're going to scam here as well. Now, here is Kelly Loeffler giving an update on some additional actions the SBA is also taking in the state of Ohio. Some 27,000 SBA borrowers that have now been banned and are also having that money clawed back.
Small businesses are our biggest job creator in the country, but they're also our nation's biggest taxpayers. Like every taxpayer, they deserve to know that the programs that they pay into will be there for those who need them, not siphoned away by fraudsters who would rather steal from hardworking Americans than become hardworking Americans. Since day one, the SBA has focused our efforts on the Paycheck Protection Program, which will go down as one of the most defrauded federal programs in American history. During the pandemic, our agency delivered $1.2 trillion that was meant for small businesses, of which the Office of Inspector General deemed $200 billion was stolen, including right here in Ohio. The Biden administration chose to look the other way, giving criminals de facto amnesty at the expense of your taxpayers. But this administration is choosing accountability. Last month, the SBA referred 560,000 borrowers to the DOJ and Treasury. That's over 500,000 borrowers.
You know, I also just want to go on record and say I'm totally in favor of wrapping up all these scammers at the business level, at the civilian level. But who made the decision at the SBA? Who gave the directive to ignore that this fraud was taking place? I want those people charged even more, because there's only so much money we're going to be able to claw back. There's only so much property that we can repossess. There's only so many people that can be held accountable at the local level. I want the head of the snake. I want the people who gave the directive and who made the decision to allow these scammers to get away with it, because those people, in my view, are even more dangerous than your average fraudster out there defrauding the Paycheck Protection Program.
To start collections and prosecutions for $22 billion in suspected PPP fraud. Today, we've announced suspensions for 140,000 borrowers across California, Minnesota, and Maine, totaling $9 billion. And today, I'm here to announce suspensions for over 27,000 Ohio borrowers tied to $1.1 billion in suspected PPP fraud.
How many of those do you guys think are Somalis? Probably quite a few.
As you've heard today, this task force is exposing the fraudsters, making them return what they stole, and sending them to jail. The Trump administration will uphold law and order and not protect criminals at the expense of honest, hardworking Americans. This administration is putting up new guardrails for the future, and we will go state by state to correct the past. I want to thank my colleagues for their dedication. None of this would have been possible without the president's fight for the American people, the vice president's leadership, and this team's hard work. There is no fraud too small. And that's why the SBA is proud to help deliver justice on behalf of America's job creators.
Get them. Keep bringing them in. All right. Now, here, one of the DOJ attorneys on the task force, Colin McDonald is the DOJ attorney leading the task force, but this is Federal Trade Commission Chairman Andrew Ferguson. Here, he is talking about what I alluded to earlier. The state of Hawaii, they had their own anti-fraud division that they were actually accepting money from the federal government to operate. But the entire time they were taking money from the federal government, they didn't charge or even investigate a single fraudster. So the federal government is disbanding their fraud unit, and they're putting in their own. And I don't know if that's going to lead to any charges for people in Hawaii, but it just goes to show you that it is vitally important to go after the decision makers as it is to go after the people that are stealing the money.
The Trump administration is going to take seriously the obligation that you have an effective Medicaid fraud control unit in your state. Everyone is on notice, and today Hawaii is being decertified for its abject failure to enforce state and federal law to prohibit fraud in Hawaii. And the reason this is important is because one of the requirements for getting Medicaid money for your state is to have an effective Medicaid fraud control unit. And if you don't have one, it can jeopardize the state's access to Medicaid money generally. The Trump administration is going to take...
So Hawaii getting a tongue lashing. Now, here is Andrew Ferguson just expounding upon this, talking about exactly what it was that Hawaii did.
Office of the Inspector General, led by March Bell in coordination with the task force, has decertified Hawaii's Medicaid fraud control unit. Let me explain why this is important. Every year, the United States taxpayers send $2 trillion through Medicaid and Medicare out to the states. There are conditions on the money that goes out to the states, and one of them is very simple. If states want access to this money, they have to create a unit to fight fraud in those states, led by the attorney generals of those states. We are joined up here by Dave Yost. Ohio's Medicaid Fraud Control Unit is one of the gold standard control units for fighting fraud in the United States, and that is a credit to his leadership. The opposite has been taking place in Hawaii. For more than a decade, Hawaii's Medicaid Fraud Control Unit has received millions and millions of dollars to fight fraud and has consistently been one of the lowest performing fraud units in the country. They have been the subject of continued demands to improve their performance since 2014, dating back to the Obama administration. And from 2021 to 2025, Hawaii's Medicaid funding went up 27%. Their Medicaid enrollment went up 40%. And they did not produce a single conviction or obtain a single indictment of a fraudster from 2021 to 2025. And so this morning, the Inspector General, in coordination with the task force, exercised his statutory obligation to end the grants being paid to Hawaii, to make sure that money that goes out the door to the states is going to actually fight fraud.
Yeah, if you're just taking money and going through the motions, then obviously you don't deserve any kind of help. All right, now, finally, here is the AG in charge of the Department of Justice's Fraud Division, Colin McDonald, giving us a final wrap-up on exactly what they're doing there.
War against fraud has come to Ohio, and we plan to leave no doubt as to who will win. That will be the team behind me, federal and state partners who have come together as one to battle the fraud crisis that has crippled our taxpayer-funded programs and robbed the American purse for too long. Under President Trump, Vice President Vance, and Acting Attorney General Blanche, the days of brazen thievery of taxpayer dollars is over. With our state and federal partners, the Department of Justice is rapidly deploying a fraud-fighting apparatus that is capable of fighting fraud no matter how big, no matter how small, no matter how hard. In the last 60 days, the Department of Justice has announced more than 550 fraud enforcement actions across the country, representing billions of dollars in attempted theft from the United States taxpayer. There is nowhere we won't go to fight fraud, and that includes here in Ohio. Today, Ohio's fraud-fighting team is uniting with us in historic ways to contribute uniquely to the fight against fraud. Attorney General Dave Yost, you'll hear from in a minute, is advancing an $11 million fraud action through the Medicaid Fraud Control Unit. And as he concludes his service in the Attorney General's office, we thank him for his years of commitment to Ohio and wish him well in his next chapter. The Fraud Division and Ohio Secretary of State Frank LaRose executed this morning a data sharing agreement that provides the Fraud Division access to corporate registrant data held by the state of Ohio. This data will be used in proactive data analysis to quickly identify ownership links between clinics, labs, and billing entities that fraudsters use and hide behind to obscure control over healthcare fraud and other fraud schemes. We thank Secretary LaRose for collaborating with us today. Auditor Keith Faber continues to set the standard for state-led fraud investigations and for building enforcement capacity and coordination. His office has applied to the DOJ's Special Attorneys Grant Program to detail special prosecutors to the Department of Justice's Fraud Division, and we welcome all state and local prosecutors to do the same and follow Auditor Faber's lead. Treasurer Robert Sprague has formally joined the statewide Benefits Fraud Enforcement Task Force initiated by U.S. Attorney Gerace. His office will aim to bring critical financial analysis capabilities that will strengthen our ability to identify irregularities, prevent improper payments, and safeguard taxpayer funds. Each of these steps taken by these state leaders strengthen our ability to accomplish our shared fraud enforcement mission. The days of information silos are over. The leadership here and the willingness to innovate and collaborate is raising the standard for every other state. Ohio is proving what's possible when federal and state partners move in lockstep. Smarter detection, stronger enforcement, and real protection for the American taxpayer. The truth is, we need all hands on deck in every state. The National Fraud Task Force, the Department of Justice, and the Fraud Division will work collaboratively with anyone who is committed to ending fraud in America and saving the taxpayers' money.
I also just read that the effort that President Trump announced, restarting those coal plants, it was actually done with $200 million that was set aside by the Biden administration that was supposed to be used for Green New Deal stuff. So it's money that was already there. It was already apportioned for something that the president had shut down, and he just diverted it into the coal efforts, which is, it's great. Gotta love it. All right. Now, thank you so much to Righteous Anger 1776, who says, now do Washington next, please. We are sinking up here. I can only imagine that they're going to be going around to every single state. And since Washington doesn't seem like they want to help out in any way, it's perhaps going to be a little bit of a stronger effort up there. Principled Enigma says, I got here late. Was the email helpful? I haven't been able to do anything with the email yet, so I'm sure it will be, but both you and Kev wrote, and I haven't had a chance to go through it yet. Artsy Jones says, no, I already read that one. Thank you very much. All right, now, here we have a letter from the USDA Deputy Secretary who is specifically calling out Democrats for their support of the welfare industrial complex. This was sent to House Democrats from the Department of Agriculture. Deputy Secretary Stephen Vaden slamming these so-called apologists for leftist organizations and their participation in the welfare complex. What they're doing is propping up a failed system. There is rampant fraud going on all around the United States at the expense of Americans, and of course the Democrats want to do everything they can to protect that. So he reaffirms the overall goal of the Trump administration. What they're doing is reallocating much of the efforts of the USDA. They're taking all of the USDA employees from the Washington, D.C. area, and they're moving them into the heartland of the United States, what are going to be 5 regional hubs, in a better effort to help reduce bureaucracy, also bring down costs, help get the USDA closer to where they actually need to be, in states where farmers are actually farming, and also so that the farmers themselves have better access to USDA services and help. It can improve efficiency, and then also, most importantly, fight fraud, waste, and abuse. Now, part of the USDA is the Food and Nutrition Administration. It used to be the Food and Nutrition Service. They're now going to also be moving their headquarters and regional staff out of D.C. and Northern Virginia, and they're going to be consolidating from 7 regional offices down to the same 5 hubs that are broader, better aligned with the USDA's mission. They're going to be in Raleigh, North Carolina, Kansas City, Missouri, Indianapolis, Indiana, Fort Collins, Colorado, and Salt Lake City, Utah. Deputy Secretary Vaden and Secretary Brooke Rollins have noted that there have been decades without stable Senate-confirmed leadership in the nutrition programs, and the structure is fragmented, and it's got really high administrative costs. They're not really doing what their mission was supposed to be for. He's also pointing out a lot of erroneous payments and fraud in the nutrition programs like SNAP, which we've identified and called out on many occasions. I'm sure you remember that Brooke Rollins had revealed that her department uncovered massive fraud within the SNAP program. There were, of course, 21 Democrat-led states that are still actively blocking the efforts of the administration to expose it and to correct it. And Vaden had cited an instance of one individual getting SNAP in 6 different states. And of course, there's another person who had over $50,000 loaded onto their EBT card. And of course, the U.S. Attorney's Office for the Southern District of New York had announced a longtime USDA employee, along with 5 others, were busted in one of the largest food stamp frauds in American history. Attorney for the United States, Perry Carbone, and Sharmika Parker, the special agent in charge of the U.S. Department of Agriculture at the Office of Inspector General, Christopher Raya, and the assistant director in charge of the New York field office for the FBI, revealed a superseding indictment for that case that was unsealed, charging 6 additional people in connection with a $66 million and more fraud and bribery scheme that was also targeting the Supplemental Nutrition Assistance Program, the food stamp program. So in part, the letter reads, I might remind you of 2 recent instances that did significantly impact access to nutrition programs. The first was the Obama and Biden administration's mismanagement of the food distribution on Indian reservations program. That disrupted food availability and access across Indian country. The Biden regime's failures were so serious that the Subcommittee on Nutrition, Foreign Agriculture, and Horticulture of the Committee on Agriculture and the Subcommittee on Agriculture, Rural Development, Food and Drug Administration, and related agencies of the Committee on Appropriations held a rare joint oversight hearing to investigate how the Biden regime's incompetence caused those shortages. There was a failure of execution twice over. The second was the government shutdown last fall when congressional Democrats refused to open the federal government to feed families in need. Rather than negotiate a compromise that would restore federal operations, Democrat lawmakers prioritized ideological grievances over the immediate need for our nation's most vulnerable. On May 13th of this year, the House Committee on Agriculture held a roundtable where I discussed the reorganization and took questions from attending members. Noticeably absent were these questions raised in the public letter. However, I welcome a second opportunity to provide information. When a business is not serving its customers or operating within its budget, corporations regularly restructure. Some recent notable private sector restructuring includes Chevron's relocation to Houston, Texas, to escape the overregulation and hostile business climate found in California. Walmart similarly announced it was relocating about 1,000 workers as it sought to combine their global technology and product teams into 2 primary locations. Now, Secretary Rollins also testified before another subcommittee on the SNAP program. And here she is discussing at least $3 billion per year in fraud that she is still trying to get cleaned up because these Democrat-run states are trying to fight her.
Terry, do you know what the SNAP fraud rate actually is according to the most recent estimates from USDA? The fraud rate.
Well, that is based on data we're receiving from the states that we can't verify. That's the whole point of this, is we have no ability to verify California, Minnesota, where the fraud has been
reclaiming my time. It was 1.6% according to USDA.
Your state is saying we only have 1.6% fraud rate, which we all know is an absolute joke.
I'll say it again. You understand the difference between error rates and fraud rates. I honestly don't. It is one of the lowest fraud rate in any program in America is the SNAP program.
The lowest fraud rate of any program in America is the SNAP program? You can't be serious when you say that.
Your own data says 1.6%.
Again, that's because the states, your state has told us that number,
once more.
And you won't allow us to confirm it.
So what this ranking member, Ms. Craig, is saying is that based upon the information you have right now, there is no fraud. But what we also don't have is the information itself. There is no information that's being given by the states. The data has been over and over again. They have refused to turn it over. But just by looking at the information they do have, they've identified at least $3 billion a year in fraud. But nationwide, they extrapolate that number to be closer to $10 billion. Not just erroneous payments, but people who are actively defrauding the system. And, of course, Representative Angie Craig points to faulty information to make the case that the fraud doesn't exist. It's as if people in your community were being murdered and then their bodies were just being buried out in the desert and nobody is reporting their murders. Sure, they're missing, but can you prove they're no longer alive? Well, not unless you have a body to actually point to, but that's just a retarded way to go about it. Now, earlier today, the House passed a resolution to end war with Iran. This is that war powers resolution that they've been attempting to pass for quite some time. 4 Republicans did vote with Democrats. It was 215 to 208. This would be the first time the House has voted to stop whatever military operations are currently taking place in Iran. The 4 Republicans that voted with Democrats were Thomas Massey, Brian Fitzpatrick, Tom Barrett, and Warren Davidson. Now, this still has to go through the Senate, but it's likely to fail once it gets to the Senate, so it really doesn't matter. Now, I had mentioned to you guys last week, or maybe it was early this week, that I saw a post from a user on X calling out Josh Hawley for getting ready to gavel in for that pro forma session in the Senate so that he and the rest of the Senate could block President Trump from being able to make any recess appointments. That was actually written up in an article by Gateway Pundit, which allowed me to actually find the post, which is coming from a user by the name of, where is it? Where is she? Right here. Brooke Gossett. Brooke Gossett. All right. She says, "Dear Senator Hawley, you have betrayed us. We thought for sure you were going to be doing the right thing to help us drain the swamp and carry out the mandates we brought forth when electing Trump. On Memorial Day 2026, while the rest of America paused to honor the fallen who died defending our freedoms, you chose to gavel in a meaningless pro forma Senate session and then gavel it right back out. A 30-second ritual that accomplished exactly nothing except one thing: deliberately blocking President Trump from making a single recess appointment. You personally stood in the way of the American people's mandate. We voted. We won. We gave President Trump the White House. We gave Republicans the Senate. We sent a clear message. Drain the swamp, confirm the loyalists, and move at warp speed to repair what the last 4 years destroyed. And far beyond the last 4 years, let me just say. Instead, you and the rest of the Senate club decided the dusty old rule book matters more than the will of the voters who handed you the majority. By keeping the Senate technically in session through sham pro forma meetings, you stripped the president of a constitutional tool specifically designed to bypass obstruction like this. Do you understand what that means, Senator? It means qualified America First nominees, judges, ambassadors, agency heads, and military leaders remain stuck in limbo, while the same entrenched bureaucrats who sabotaged Trump the first time continue holding power. It means the deep state gets more time to resist, delay, leak, obstruct, and laugh at the voters who believe change was finally coming. It means Americans are once again being told their landslide victory was meaningless because the Senate has traditions. You ran on fighting the swamp. You wrote books about it. You raised your fist outside the Capitol with us. Now you're the one holding the gavel that keeps the swamp alive. We are not disappointed, Senator Hawley. We are furious. You didn't have to take that presiding slot. You didn't have to participate in the ritual blocking the establishment from the very change Americans demanded, but you did. And every day those positions remain unfilled is another day the agenda America voted for is delayed. This is not procedure. This is betrayal dressed up in a suit and tie. The swamp does not drain itself. It requires leaders willing to confront a broken system instead of protecting it under the banner of tradition. And right now, you are choosing the institution over the people who elected you. We expected better from you. We still want to believe you're not just another suit who talks tough on Fox News and then folds the moment Senate leadership whispers tradition. So prove us wrong. Demand these pro forma charades end immediately. Demand recess appointments be allowed so President Trump can govern at the speed this moment requires. Stand in that chamber and publicly call out the hypocrisy, because if you don't, the answer to the question, what did Josh Hawley do on Memorial Day 2026, will be simple. He helped keep the swamp alive. We're watching, we're angry, and we will remember. Sincerely, we, the disappointed, disgusted, and determined Trump voters, the American majority you were elected to serve. Well, great post. I love it, and she's absolutely correct. But the truth is that Josh Hawley is playing the game. Josh Hawley is continuing to keep the swamp in power in Washington, D.C. And every day that goes by is another day, another opportunity lost, another reason that these people should not be allowed to remain in power. And I sincerely hope that just like we've seen in other races, in Josh Hawley's next election, somebody has the guts to get up there and challenge him. Now, because now the Senate's back in session, so of course any hope of a recess appointment or a series of recess appointments is not going to be possible. But Senate Republicans yesterday, voted 49-50 to defeat an amendment by Chuck Schumer that would ban President Trump's weaponization fund. Now, of course, at this point, they have agreed to not continue forward with the plan, but that doesn't mean that they can't bring it back around in the future after Todd Blanche gets confirmed. Of course, the usual suspects, Susan Collins, Dan Sullivan, and John Husted, have agreed to join the Democrats on this. And it's only a matter of time, hopefully, before something like this is finally put into play. Now, Debbie Wasserman Schultz, of course, one of the worst hairdos in the state of Florida, and a longtime Democrat operative, former chair of the DNC, has just been outgunned in the state of Florida. She has been outmaneuvered through the redistricting process And of course, the Democrats consistently say that Republicans can't redistrict because that means that black candidates are not going to be able to hold office. Well, this is a district that Debbie Wasserman Schultz has held for quite some time, and her staying in power had nothing to do with racial equity or anything or anything similar to that. So here is Debbie Wasserman Schultz talking about the possibility of Democrat candidates holding a position that a black candidate would have. Now, she spoke here. Where is the quote? Hold on. Okay, so there was a Leon County Circuit judge who upheld Governor DeSantis's redistricting map. Now it's in play. Judge Joshua Hawks denied the request for the temporary injunction from Equal Ground Florida and their attorneys, which was the Elias Law Group. Elias lost multiple times. So that means the new congressional map is sticking around, and that's going to move it from 20 Republican, 8 Democrat to 24 Republican, 4 Democrat. This will be in the upcoming midterm elections. And the map eliminated Debbie Wasserman Schultz. That was Florida's 25th district. It split it into 5 different districts, most of them more Republican leaning. So rather than facing competition and running in the newly redrawn Florida 22, where she actually lives, she is putting her desire for personal power above all else, and she's chosen to run in Florida's 20th district, which is a plurality black district in Broward County that has long been represented by black Democrats. So because Florida 20 is a heavily Democrat district, it's a safer bet for her to win re-election than where she lives. So now she has said publicly that her seniority and political clout will allow her to deliver more for the district. And if Democrats regain the House majority in November, her tenure is going to put her into a major position on a committee. And this also means that a black Democrat is not going to be able to run in this district and win. Elijah Manley is the first candidate to enter the primary race for this seat. And he said, I would have not expected the call would come from inside the House, meaning that Debbie Wasserman Schultz is trying to usurp a black candidate from winning in a black district. I didn't think a white Democrat would be the one to take away a black seat. Well, obviously, Mr. Manley, you haven't been paying attention because this is nothing new. Just take a look at Tennessee and Steve Cohen. Anyways, he said it's disappointing that she was not sensitive to the call by many in the community. I actually gave her polling data that showed she could win 22 at that time, but there were not any candidates in the race on the Democratic side. And House Minority Leader Hakeem Jeffries is not commenting. But Debbie Wasserman Schultz looks like she's going to be taking away the possibility of a black person from holding a position in Florida. Let's see. A couple of things over on Rumble. Lee Walden, Zach, I was under the presumption that crypto was a sovereign currency. How is it that U.S. Treasury was able to shut down the finance from Iran? Scott, okay, so crypto is not controlled by the banking system. I mean, it's owned by you. But in criminal cases, in the case of ill-gotten gains, the federal government has the power to seize wealth, whether it's from a bank account or from a cryptocurrency account. So, they were taking it from people they accused of committing crimes and people who were under sanctions. So it's money. They went and got it. Above all else, it shows you that crypto is actually money, that it's real money. Tricia says, I saw someone mention USAID. I've been going through old pictures and I found a newspaper article about my uncle who worked for USAID, or worked for AID before it was called USAID in the 40s or 50s. He was a good man. Yeah, I mean, just because your uncle worked for an organization that became super corrupt doesn't mean that he was corrupt. I totally believe it. Never, ever forget America. Her promise is still within our reach and certainly worth the fight. All I ask is don't catch the stupid like it's molasses. It's everywhere. Bring some honey. Denise says, Zach, I can guarantee you I will not be voting for Josh Hawley again. He has been a disappointment for a while now. Hopefully we get a strong America First candidate to go against him in a couple of years. Amen. I absolutely agree. All right. Now, I wanted to show you the face of the woman who was brutally murdered on the Atlanta MARTA train this week. The great-grandmother who was stabbed to death 20 times in a brutal and senseless random attack in midday on that Atlanta train. This is Margaret Swan, grandparent Margaret Swan. So as a result of that attack, people are asking for answers. And most importantly, Secretary Sean Duffy of the Department of Transportation is asking for answers from MARTA and from the city of Atlanta. So he wants to know the number of assaults, robberies, and rapes that are occurring on MARTA trains, because it's more than 3 times the national average. He actually has the information, but he wants Atlanta to admit it. So they have 15 days from today, when he put this post out, to provide how much Atlanta is spending for security on MARTA trains. They want them to put together a safety plan for riders and workers so that nobody else gets murdered. And then also a detailed action strategy plan to prevent crime from taking place and fare evasion as well. He says Margaret's family deserves accountability because no one should be forced to fear their safety on public transit. I'm glad that he's coming out and speaking about this because I was shocked, but all of the places that were covering Margaret's murder, they didn't even show a picture of her. You know, when people are murdered in a situation like this, you got to show their face. You got to show their face, because this was an innocent person who was killed by a crazed lunatic. I saw pictures of him, but not pictures of her. We got to put a name to the face. Margaret Swan. Margaret Swan should be alive today. God rest her soul. All right, now, here is another case of senseless violence. A young man by the name of Dylan Plouffe. He was murdered by the monster to the right, Daniel McCrae. He was a young husband and father of 4 children. He was brutally beaten to death for no reason. Right after Daniel McCrae was released from jail, Dylan was 34 years old. He was working as a security guard in Milwaukee, and he was confronted by Daniel McCrae, who was trying to break into cars on the 18th of May. Daniel, who is not dead, who was the man who beat Dylan to death, is a 32-year-old career criminal. He was released from jail on May 12th without any charges for doing the exact same thing. He had committed a violent assault, but for whatever reason, Milwaukee chose not to charge him. Also, during his arrest on May 12th, Daniel McCrae also injured an officer as they were trying to arrest him. And then 6 days later, he fatally beat Dylan Plouffe to death. So he was working as a security guard when police say he was allegedly assaulted after he came upon this 32-year-old man trying to break into cars in the garage in the early morning hours of May 18th. Daniel McCrae then assaulted Dylan Plouffe and nearly killed him. He was taken to the hospital, and then later he died from the injuries that he sustained. Now, cause of death is not yet determined, but I'd say it was having the shit beat out of him by a career criminal that killed him. So Mr. Plouffe has been arrested, and he has charges pending in the Milwaukee County District Court. We don't know exactly what he's being charged with, but the Plouffe, Dylan's family, it looks like, does have a GoFundMe account to cover funeral expenses. And so I wanted to share that as well, because obviously this guy should be there with his wife and his 4 children. He should not be dead at this time. So far, they've raised $11,770 out of the $18,000 that they are seeking. Here he is with his kids. Really sad. There he is with his wife. That's I don't think his wife is in that photograph, but here is he and his wife and their children right there. And it looks like his parents are in this photograph as well. Really sad. Really, really sad, man. So sick of seeing this shit. If that guy would have remained in jail because of the assault that he had committed just a couple of days earlier, then Dylan would be alive, and we wouldn't be having this conversation. It's totally senseless. Completely senseless. All right. Now, moving on from that tragedy, we also do have a cause of death for that missing scientist that was an employee at Los Alamos Laboratory that was just found this past week after she disappeared without any sort of indication of where she might have gone nearly a year ago. Now, this is not a normal situation. New Mexico State Police, when they announced the remains of 54-year-old Melissa Casillas, that scientist and nuclear lab employee, she was last seen alive on June 25th of last year, and her body was found in a location of McAfee Ridge in the Carson National Forest, about 6 miles from the place that she was last seen. This is, again, a part of the forest that had previously, and not that long ago, been searched. So it would appear that her body was found skeletonized and propped up in a seated position against a tree. She did have that gunshot wound to the skull, and a gun was nearby. Now, obviously, the gun is what killed her. The bullet is what killed her. As soon as we learned that there was a firearm nearby, it seemed pretty obvious that that was going to be the cause of death. But an investigator looking into this case says that he's been working on her disappearance on behalf of her parents since she went missing last June. And he said he is very suspicious. He thinks that foul play was likely involved in her death. He said it's great that the press is getting out the story, but it's got nothing to do with Los Alamos. If you want to tell the story, tell the real story. I want to be emphatic on this point. This is in no way, shape, or form related to her job. Well, that's what he says, but I don't know other than that. Now, she left all of her records, her phone, her purse, everything at her home when she disappeared. Former FBI Assistant Director Chris Swecker spoke with the Daily Mail in March and said that he thought that her disappearance was part of a bigger pattern involving individuals that were doing this top secret government research. Not exactly certain why the investigator thinks that it wasn't related to her job, but former FBI Assistant Director Swecker had theorized that the work that Casillas had done at Los Alamos would have made her a target for abduction. So the reason is that the work that she did dealt with a lot of sensitive stuff. So in a classified job, in a high clearance job, if somebody knows you work there and perhaps it's an enemy of the United States and they want to get information, it's not that big of a stretch to come and kidnap you. But the only problem is that she seems to have left her life entirely and then just disappeared. I'm not ready to say that this doesn't have anything to do with her position at Los Alamos, and I think that it's entirely suspicious that she was found in a location that had already been searched. The fact that she skeletonized would suggest that she had been dead for some time. But from what we read recently, there had been search efforts taking place in that area not that long ago, which might seem to indicate that somebody had placed her body there and sort of staged the scene, if you will. All right. Now, this is an account that I've told you about before. Well, two accounts. Official Layoff and White Papers Policy Institute, both looking into issues related to immigration. Now, Official Layoff, they do a lot of work looking into the H-1B and the visa abuse. The United States has 3 times more immigrants than any other country on earth. 1 of 6 immigrants in the entire world lives here in the United States. We have no other developed nation on the planet that absorbs that many people. And as a result of that, the U.S. has absorbed a disproportionate number of of migrants in general. 9 out of 10 new jobs in the United States right now go to them. If we look at all of these industrialized nations, the closest after the United States is Germany. All right. Right now, we've got, on paper, 52.4 million migrants that live in the United States. That is 17.2% of the global total of people moving around the world. Germany only has 5.5%, but that's 16.8 million. Saudi Arabia is third with 13.7 million, 4.5%. And then the United Kingdom, 11.8 million with 3.9%. What does that mean? Right now, 25% of all Mexicans in the world live here in the United States. Let me say that again. 1/4 of the entire population of all Mexicans that are alive in the world live in the United States. And 70% of those Mexicans living here in the United States are on welfare. Approximately 10% of all Guatemalans live here in the United States, and 77% of them are on welfare. 12% of all Nicaraguans live here in the United States, and 75% of them are on welfare. 12% of all Haitians live here in the United States, and 53% of them are on welfare. Do you need any more reason to shut down immigration entirely and clear out the people that have moved here to the United States that should not be living here? It is an untenable position to be living in. Here is the real world consequence of that. This is a report from Christopher Rufo from San Francisco. Hondurans are, I guess, pouring in to San Francisco. Not only are they moving into San Francisco, but they're also controlling the drug market. These guys, the Hondos, this is where you go if you want to pick up some fentanyl or meth. And they have open air drug markets in the Tenderloin district that nobody is doing anything to stop.
It's 3 a.m. in San Francisco's Tenderloin district, and this all-night drug-fueled party has been underway for hours. On all of the most important corners, there are groups of men openly selling drugs to anyone who needs them.
You guys got ready?
Yeah. These are the Hondos, migrants from Honduras who have cornered the drug trade in San Francisco. They set up shop in the evenings and they operate with impunity.
I mean, the people come out the homeless shelter right there. Yeah.
JJ Smith has lived in San Francisco all his life. A few years ago, his older brother died of a fentanyl overdose. Ever since, he's dedicated himself to documenting the reality on the streets and helping get addicts into treatment.
I got hit in the head with a machete right there.
A few years ago, a group of Hondos attacked JJ with a machete after he told them to stop dealing drugs in front of a school.
Not only did I get hit with a machete, I also seen the Honduras hack another individual with a machete until they killed him. And you know what? The same Honduran I seen hack him with that machete that killed the guy, he's still right now, probably be on the same corner tonight.
When we approached them, some members of this Honduran crew offered to sell us drugs.
I'm trying to get some Fetty. How much?
He was selling a synthetic opioid called isotonitazine, or ISO, which is up to...
Oh, dude, though, that is super dangerous. Like, it doesn't take much fentanyl to kill you. The nitazine that he's talking about, that stuff, it's like a 1/10 of the amount of fentanyl is required to, like, get you high and kill you. That's why these people are so zombified.
20 times more powerful than fentanyl. After 3 days and nights of reporting, one thing became perfectly clear. In San Francisco's Tenderloin district, the Hondos rule.
That's all I'm going to say about that. Take care of that problem right quick. All right, now, wanted to show you this as well. This is a security camera footage of a couple of thugs trying to carjack a Marine in Oxford Hill, Maryland. This is from just yesterday. Take a look at this. They obviously picked the wrong Marine to mess with. So you can see they come up here, they approach him as he's loading his truck, get cute, pull out a gun, but our boy's ready. Get him! Get him! Woo! I love it. I love a happy ending. I got another happy ending for you. Speaking of migrants, U.S. Customs and Border Protection have just interdicted a boat carrying 240 Haitian illegals that was trying to make its way to the United States. This vessel was carrying mostly military-aged men, and Turks and Caicos authorities rescued these migrants and took them into custody before they could reach U.S. soil. All of these Haitians were illegals, and this boat was not particularly safe. It was overcrowded. It was already taking on water. It was probably going to drown. Excuse me, it was probably going to sink, and they all likely would have drowned if it wasn't for the interdiction of Turks and Caicos and the Customs and Border Protection people. They stopped a catastrophic event from taking place, and they were able to, of course, have them taken into custody by this other country. Now, 1 second. Oh, good God. As we get past this commercial. All right, you can see here. Look at this boat. Oh, man. Look at how this boat is loaded up. Absolutely incredible. This is what these people are willing to do to try to make their way to the United States. But, obviously, they didn't make it. This is from CBP and Marine Operations. Probably from a drone right there. All right. Now, here we also have good news coming out of South Carolina. ICE and Customs and Border Protection have just announced a major operation targeting the employers of illegal aliens. They were they raided a factory. It's like some kind of factory, some kind of plant, and they arrested not only the 48 illegal aliens, but they also arrested the plant manager and their HR coordinator for this casting company. This is in Abbeville, South Carolina. Now, the Americans that were hiring the illegal aliens faced 3 years in prison, and the 48 illegal aliens that were working for this plant face deportation.
Everywhere. I got an escort out this bit. Black trucks. I get escort, gang. Look at this shit. This shit is diabolical. They everywhere too.
I hope he's not upset. I mean, he can get his boys' jobs now. They got 48 openings.
On my mama there. Man, I already got banned out there. My money fucked up.
Yeah, now I saw people asking, why didn't they arrest the owners of this company? Well, the owners of the company didn't hire the illegal aliens. The HR manager and the plant manager did. So this was a joint operation with South Carolina law enforcement, ICE, Homeland Security investigations. They raided this manufacturing facility, and with those two managers being arrested, they're facing both federal and state charges. Apparently, the investigation was going on for quite some time. Now, you may not know, but the Indiana Attorney General and the Indiana State Assembly have just put together a new package allowing them to enforce immigration laws as well. And they have specifically stated that they are going after Indiana businesses that are knowingly employing illegal aliens. This plan goes into effect on July 1st, so that gives these Indiana businesses the time they need to fire these people and hire Americans. If they don't, they will be handed over to the feds, and they are already taking tips for U.S. Customs and Immigration Enforcement, and the Federal Department of Labor and local law enforcement agencies are already looking into the businesses that are hiring illegal aliens. We can see here, it's called the Fairness Act, and it was signed into law in March. It strengthens Indiana's cooperation with federal immigration authorities, requiring local agencies to honor ICE detainer requests and prohibiting sanctuary policies all across the state. But most importantly, the law targets employers who knowingly hire people not authorized to work in the United States and expands the Attorney General's authority to investigate those violations. Get them, boys. All right, now I have one final message from our friends over here on Rumble. Let me read that, and then we will go through our final stories of the day. My friends, if you are fed up with big tech snooping on your business and your personal life, we may have found the solution. Last Hour Hosting is your 100% U.S.-based, affordable, Christian-owned web host that puts your privacy and your freedom first. They offer easy website hosting, e-commerce, private email, and more, and it all starts at just $29 a month. Friendly people right here in the U.S., not foreigners, ready to help you. They also donate 10% back to nonprofits that defend your God-given rights. No more creepy data collection, no more globalism, no more AI nonsense. If you need it fast and done for you, then no problem, because they also offer a ton of fully managed services for all of your online needs, from ideas to scaling, marketing, and even more. They are your easy one-stop shop. And to find out about them, you can go to lasthourhosting.org and use the code FREEDOM for 5% off your first project or migration and take back control of your online presence. Last Hour Hosting, hosting for the last hour so you can follow your dreams. You can use the QR code on screen as well. Thank you very much to them, and thank you to Rumble, and thank you to American businesses supporting the mission here on Red Pill News. All right, thank you also to Lee Walden, who says, can't help but think of the movie True Lies. Trisha also says, I asked someone who put up a fundraiser for the Trump House guy if he knew the man. Instead of answering me, he reported me to GoFundMe. They sent me an email banning me from posting. Fine, I won't. Wow, okay, well, I think that might mean that that person has nothing to do with them. Jen L. Coates says, thank you for everything you do, and then drops another $20 and says, it took me a minute to figure out how to give you more than $1. Thank you, Jen. I appreciate you and your generosity. All right, I don't know if you guys saw this, but Anna Paulina Luna had claimed that she was assaulted by the owner or the founder of Code Pink, and she said that she has the footage, and it's a violent, bone-crushing attack. Not really. I feel like Anna Paulina Luna is kind of making much ado about nothing. And I don't know that this woman, Miss Benjamin, deserves to be prosecuted for assault. I don't like her, but I feel like Anna Paulina Luna is really
look at the double extra
going off
white.
the deep end.
That
What
was the
is
phrase
up
I heard
with these
from my
ads?
former college friend the day before my wedding.
Cuban people.
Right. Okay, so you take a look at this and you tell me, do you think Anna Paulina Luna was assaulted?
Not right now by a policy of cutting off oil, cutting off every single way that government can get money to keep the hospitals going.
To actually get aid to the people of Cuba, because it doesn't sound like you do.
No, because Marco Rubio has been sanctioning the Cuban people, which is hurting them by the billions.
The government
by the billions.
No, that hurts the people there. They have no power. You are misinformed.
When's the last time you were in Cuba?
Wait, you just touched me.
Oh, it was
sorry. It doesn't matter. You just touched me. You're going to walk away right now, or else I'm going to call Capitol Police.
Okay.
Don't touch me.
I will walk away. Bye-bye.
It looks like it was an accident to me. I don't really think that that was an assault. And she obviously she obviously was like immediately apologized. When Anna Paulina Luna said that she got slapped, I mean, I was anticipating a slap, right? A slap. Yeah, if you blinked, you might have missed it. There's nothing here. There's nothing here. And I feel like Anna Paulina Luna has got better things to do than to try to get this woman for assault. All right, we are going to close out with this. Have you guys ever wondered why we have Pride Month? Well, it all started with... It all started with the Stonewall Inn and this supposed gay uprising where they were trying to stand up for their rights. But it actually appears it's a little more complicated than that. So here is a breakdown of why we have Gay Pride Month.
Gay people fact of the day. So the reason Pride Month is even in June is because of this event called the Stonewall Uprising, which took place in June of 1969. And essentially, we hear the same tale now every June. A bunch of brave gay people, trans people of all different colors, rising up at the Stonewall Inn, a bunch against a bigoted police who are harassing them for being different. And it's presented now as the spark of the modern gay rights movement. Love is love, bigot. Yeah, like none of that's true. The Stonewall Inn was not some like harmless dancing club for downtrodden minorities. No, like this was owned owned and operated by the Genovese crime family, who ran it basically as a cash cow. So they paid off the police to look the other way while the bar operated without a liquor license, sold drugs, had no running water, literally let the toilets overflow constantly. There were not even fire exits. Like, this should have been shut down as a matter of public safety by itself. The real reason the police raided the bar in June of 1969 had nothing to do with people just being gay. The mayor was cracking down on illegal booze, and the inn was known for that, along with other crimes like prostitution. Also, many of those prostitutes were underage. Many of the boys working there were like runaways, homeless teenagers, and some of the patrons were there to have sex with those minors, and the mafia was making money off the whole thing.
So pedophilia. It really comes down to pedophilia.
And now Time magazine lauds Stonewall for the centering of youth sex work. Okay, so when the police showed up that night, they weren't
youth sex work. So child prostitutes by any other name.
just being like meanie homophobes. Like, they were raiding a criminal operation which just so happened to cater to gay men. It's funny too, because I guess there's been a lot of fighting recently between gay people and trans people, because trans people keep trying to claim that they were like a part of this, when in reality it was just like one gay guy who was cross-dressing. And a lot of trans people are actually just gay cross-dressers who commit to the bit, but we'll discuss the science behind that later this month. But yeah, like Marsha P. Johnson, who now has a state park in Brooklyn totally in the spotlight because of this event. Yeah, he admitted on camera years later that he wasn't even there. This was not an isolated case. The same pattern existed at other gay-friendly spots in that era, like Compton's Cafeteria in the Tenderloin district of San Francisco. That was another location tied to underage prostitution and drugs. In 1977, police in the Boston suburb of Revere raided a house where gay men were luring underage boys with video games and drugs specifically to assault them. Cannot forget either that one of the very first demands to come out of the post-Stonewall gay rights groups was the lowering of the age of consent. The 1972 National Coalition of Gay Organizations platform included, quote, repeal of all laws governing the age of sexual consent. Uh-oh. So the sanitized version of Stonewall being this like freaking epic uprising, that exists specifically because activists need a clean origin story, whereas the actual story involves mafia exploitation of vulnerable teenagers, open drug dealing, and a movement apparently openly centered on the rights of adults to have sex with minors. And then when the police were like, no thanks, they just like freaked out, threw bricks at them. I can see why that history would be inconvenient. I could see why one might want to erase it, but the truth is the police were just raiding a dangerous, illegal business that preyed on people, and pretending otherwise just plays into the agenda. Okay, bye. I'll see you.
We bring in the studio this morning one of the gay rights activists, Mr. Should I call you Mr? Sure. Pepe Julian Onzima. Thank you for coming in.
Thank you for
Good morning.
Me. Morning to you.
Why are you gay?
Who says I'm gay?
You are gay. You are a transgender.
What shows that I'm gay?
You are a transgender, yes, and you're a gay rights activist and an outspoken lesbian, homosexual. How can I describe you? Now, we're looking at the raging debate. You're a gay rights activist.
Why are you gay? All right. Let me say thank you very much to Filter Dog. We saw that one. Also, Bolton hung on his own petard. Darla says, happy Marvin Heemeyer Day. Yes, happy Killdozer Day. Brewbark says, after Todd Blanche is timed out as the interim AG, assuming he's not confirmed, I think Sidney Powell will be a great choice for that next interim AG. We'll see. I tend to think that Todd Blanche is going to end up being the AG. Filter Dog says they are not counting in LA County. Yes, from what I understand, LA County's $336 million counting rooms are suspiciously empty. Oh, why would they not be counting the ballots? Don't they want to figure out who won the election? Well, they got some people there, but what are they doing? She's scrolling on Instagram. Oh, good Lord. Let's see. Also, intolerant leftists. I think the MTG and Pelosi-type millionaires should be required to pay back the money they've received. I would support that 100%. All right, you guys, I want to thank everybody for being here with us today. Thank you very much for the support. And if you haven't yet, please check out all of the other sponsors of the program. You can find that in the description of this video. Whether you want to get yourself some chlorine dioxide water purification kits at onenessdrops.com. And that is absolutely the incorrect screen. Here is the correct screen. No, that's not it either. What is it? This one? No, what the heck? That's the one. That's the one. OneDisDrops.com/RedPill78 to get 15% off your chlorine dioxide water purification kits. Also, my friends over at MyPillow.com support Mike Lindell's efforts to become the governor of Minnesota. Use code RP78 and get up to 80% off his amazing American-made products. My good friend Jordan over at ConsciousStrength.net. Use the link in the description below, and you'll get 10% off of all of his American products as well. Also, RNCStore.com, and that would be RNCStore.com or RNCStore.com/RP78 to get their Laetrile B17 products. Of course, the Big C. Check out all the information on that. You can see my interviews with them as well on my Rumble channel. And finally, my friends, I guess that would be it. Pet Club, Red Pill News. .petclub247.com for their Coriolus Versicolor products. Also good for the Big C as well. So thank you for being here. Good luck. God bless. I'm going to go ahead and set up a raid, and I'm also going to pass out the gold pills. There you go. All right, you guys. I'll see you tomorrow right here for Friday's edition of Red Pill News Live at 5 p.m. Good luck, and God bless. If you wouldn't mind, hit that like button before you go.